seconds, we're recording. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today Steve Mayeda from Austin, Texas. This interview fits in a series of interviews in which I want to introduce to you the people that have inspired me, continue to inspire me, which I'm fascinated by, and also want to explore more which are the gifts they have to give to the world, and then find ways to help in that, you know. So this is the interview where I'm going to explore more what's in the head of Steve, also what his work exists of, and then we're going to address a couple of themes. Well, the interview is mainly because I don't know so much about Steve, or not enough. I've always been fascinated by his fire with which he speaks and posts. He seems a man that's burning, and I really resonate with that. I'm also very fascinated by the community that he's co-creating in Austin, Texas. Some of the people of our community are in his community, and the other way around. And it seems like a lot of the ideas are aligned with each other. So today I just want to explore a bit more and hope to forge our friendship a little bit more and see how I can help to him to bring his message to the world. So yeah, we're going to see his story. We're going to see his gifts. Because I don't know much about him, I asked him to write, to give an introduction to himself, and he wrote me this. I want to read it to you. Steve Mayeda is a man's coach in Austin, Texas. He focuses on dating, sex, and addiction. His teaching style is self-proclaimed and different. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Wim Hof enthusiast. He talks way too much for his own account. Do you really think you're talking too much, Steve?
Right now, I'm talking way too much. You guys will see. You guys will just be like, shut the fuck up and let Hans talk, I'm sure, within this interview. So that's going to happen.
No. Today is your story, your gift. So we want you to talk as much as possible. We usually shoot for an hour, but this interview will go for as long as it's needed. Let's get right into it. What I'm going to tell people, this is the timeline, or this is what we're going to present today. We're going to talk about Steve's story, which is past, present, and future, whatever he thinks is very important in the man he became today. We're going to talk about his work, and then we're going to talk about a couple of themes, like acting anyway, about anger. We're going to talk about sex, and we're going to talk about women. And we'll end with what's on the horizon for Steve in the near future. So we'll start with your story, Steve.
Yeah.
Tell your story in, say, 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, Jesus, man. You can't put a cap on that, man. So I'm excited to talk about anger and sex, because those are two like beautiful things. But, you know, for me, you know, I grew up in California and Hawaii, and, you know, just normal kid. I'm half Japanese, but grew up mainly, you know, in a, you know, kind of like an assimilated American upper middle class community. And, man, I just was never a happy kid. I was a crazy kid. I did like nuts things, you know. I was, you know, very athletic and always getting into trouble. And, you know, I was that kid that a lot of people were definitely afraid of, and perhaps for good reason. And, you know, when I was, man, I forget how old I was, but when I was, you know, 13 or 14, I, you know, was hanging out with the good crowd, or what a lot of people would call the wrong crowd, and, you know, getting into a lot of fights, and, you know, just getting fucked up, doing drugs, being bored, stealing shit. And, man, it was awesome. The only problem is, you know, I was really unhappy, but I didn't have any ways to deal with like those things. I ran away from my home when I was 15, and it, like, this was awesome. I went back, but, it's awesome. I lived with this Hawaiian family that I still consider my family. And, you know, of course, I consider my mom and dad and brother my family as well. But at the time, you know, you're all confused. You're 15. And it was so great. You know, I got to live with these people, and it was just nuts. You know, there were like 6 kids living in this house, and the mom was awesome. I still consider her my fake mom. And just really good, really open-minded, which was the opposite of my family. Long story short, my parents.
This is in Hawaii?
this was in California, but I was going to move to Hawaii with them. And when I was going to do that, my parents called the police and they filed kidnapping charges. And then like, so I had to go home. They didn't really get entertained, but basically that moved me home. The couple months later, it's a funny story. So, it's like when you're a parent, I'm a parent now, you don't know what to do. My parents are like, what the fuck do we do with this kid? My brother was really successful. My brother's a college professor now and he's a super athlete. He's 5 years older than me and he, like places in CrossFit and the national level and all this stuff. And he's just really, really still like hitting home runs, but he never had problems like me and, or didn't, and problems are what, they're in our head. We have the same reality to deal with. It's just, we're different people. And so basically, my parents are like, okay, well, let's try and make this thing back to normal. And this is nuts, man. This is so beautiful because this is the beginnings of seduction. I had no experience with women. I'm 15 or 16 or I was 15 at the time. And I'm cliff diving in California with some friends and we meet these chicks and, I don't know how to talk to girls and, typical story, the woman chooses you, she puts the moves on you. And like we go cliff diving. It was really cool, man. It's this place off of Dana Point. And there's actually a long story into that because I've gone there many times and 2 people like almost died and we had to save them. It was crazy. This is a couple months down the road from that. But I met this girl and I had no experience with women. And we're going cliff jumping and we jump and we're like, oh my God, that chick's top came off or whatever. And like, we're, kids like, oh, do you see that? Anyway, she starts talking to me and she wants to meet me. She wants to go out with me. And I don't know anything. And, basically for a 15, 16-year-old kid, it's like, well, what do you want to do? You want to like sneak some beers? You want to like go hang out at the mall or like, all these things that you're trying to do. And I remember I made out with her and she took off her top and she had these huge boobs and like is a boy you don't know. And now I've just had, I don't know how many, I've been around thousands of naked bodies, but experienced, hundreds or whatever. But to get like that perfection that you remember was just so awesome, and it's beautiful. And she didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And, you're as a man, you're horny, as a girl, you're horny, but have different, ways of expressing it. And, nothing really went beyond that, but just to see a human breast in that way. I don't think it was my first time, but it was just massive. And it had a certain feeling to it because it was so big and you see the nipple in a certain way and you're just like, oh my God, it's amazing. And you blow your load in your pants or whatever, and you walk off in shame or whatever. But it was just so awesome. And I shit you not, I was with this girl. And the reason why I brought this up is because I was with this girl and my Hawaiian mom made this like little, pouch of, this kind of like a good omen thing for me. And I think she stole it. Anyway, it was gone. And I'm like, where the fuck is that thing? And she's like, I don't know. Whatever. And I just remember after that, within like a couple days, I OD'd. I took a bunch of Valium and barbiturates and shit. And I think I had some like heroin and we were doing all sorts of drugs. Right. And I OD'd and I'd never had that happen. I didn't have to be revived, but I just woke up and I was like dope sick as hell. And I just remember I couldn't go to the bathroom, which like I'd never had that experience. Anybody who does opiates, that's what happens. It was like panicked. I had to go, but I couldn't go, and it just nothing worked. And I was just sick. My parents didn't know what was wrong with me, and but anyway, it bounced back from that, and then I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm done with life. And so I took the rest of my heroin, took all these pills, wrote like some suicide note saying like "fuck you" to the world as if it mattered. And then I didn't die, fortunately or unfortunately. At the time, I was like, damn it. And I was in a coma for like a week. And, it's funny because I've never thought the same since, not in a good way. Like I always had trouble reading, but after that, I had like major problems cognitively. I went to rehab. And after that, a lot of my life changed. And, was still a virgin, dated people here and there. And, had whatever mild sexual experiences as a guy, but I didn't really have that much experience. And it wasn't until I was 18 18, that I lost my virginity. But the crazy thing about that, and what's so great, and so many people misinterpret this story, but it's fucking beautiful. The pain in your lives and the tragedies in your lives, for everybody in your lives, somehow work out good if you can live through it. And that's what you need to know. But my girlfriend, you know, we're dating, I have sex. It's like amazing. Like, I can't believe it. It's like this amazing world. And she would kind of like do whatever. And, you know, and basically in like a couple days, we did all the experimentation we could do. But we worked together, and we worked at a gas station, and I was there. Some guys were there. I went across the street, and they robbed it, and they kidnapped her, and she got sexually assaulted. This terrible thing, right? For hours on end. And then we didn't know where she was, and we're looking for her, and the police are surrounding the station. We don't understand what's going on. And like 5 or 6 hours later, you know, she comes back. They threw her out of a moving car. Like, this is a horrible experience for her. It's like, obviously, it's extremely terrible for her. We tried to stay together, went to counseling after that. You know, you're 18 years old. You don't really know anything, but so traumatized. I got all these STDs. Like, I always talk about this because I think it's funny that people get so freaked out by STDs. My sex life, me having sex with a woman, maybe 5 or 6 times. I got mono. I got herpes. I got all this stuff, like all this shit which stuck with me. And I was like, oh my God, God has cursed me. This is truly bad. Anyway, I was just so ashamed of it. And so we eventually broke up, and we went our separate ways with stuff, and I guess figured out life on our own. Guys never got caught until much, much later. And, you know, I didn't talk to anybody for 3 years, you know, and she kept trying to have relationships, and, you know, now she has a family and all this sort of stuff. Because people always ask about her, but I didn't talk to her for years. How we came back together was 16 years later. The guys got caught through new DNA stuff. And but you know what's crazy is who you have to be, and it's much different for her, but who you have to be to know, because I saw the guys who did it, to know who did it, but they can't be prosecuted, and you have to let them walk for all of this sort of stuff because you can't prove it. And there was evidence that was screwed up, but obviously it worked out 16 years later. And like, the shit you have to go through for that is crazy. And so this is why sex is.
You knew who it was before they got convicted or caught.
Okay, so I saw them, and this is actually a real crazy thing. So I saw them, but we couldn't get a positive ID, and the DNA was screwed up at the time because there was different types of testing, and we could her identification. So when you get traumatized and you get interviewed, the whole police procedure is crazy. You know, it's necessary, but it's mind bending when you're that age for her and for me, and it was just so fucked up. Anyway, you don't ID things properly. And so we both identified the car differently. They went with her identification of it. I don't even know if mine was right, but it was just so ridiculous. And then the guys that I could ID, like somehow it just, I don't know, stopped mattering. And there were too many, like, you know, they had, I don't know, they had alibis or something like that. But what ended up happening was it did turn out to be 2 of the guys that we had ID'd, but it just didn't work out in the initial investigation. 16 years later, you know, I had to ID them, and they show you shots on a screen, and I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to expect from this. I remember I saw the dude's face, and I was like, fuck, that's him, man. That it was just like so fucked up. You know, like you have like flashbacks of that whole time and the feelings and emotions that come with it. But by then, you know, I'd done a lot of, I guess you could say, healing myself or work on myself. But it's, you know, what a beautiful thing. Obviously there's torture and torment. And I remember some guy like at the gym. So I teach jujitsu. I'm one of the coaches who teaches jujitsu at one of the gyms I work out at. And the guy, he was talking about STDs. I'm like, man, if you have STDs, don't worry about it. Like, you tell people about it. And if you tell people about it, they're usually open to it. And I tell them right away because it puts sex on the table. Like, I honestly think if we're dating each other and we're not having sex because of social rules, and don't get me wrong, I don't think people should be disrespected, but we need to redefine what disrespect is. If we have social rules guiding us, we are lying to each other. So I'll tell people, I'm like, hey, look, I like you. I don't know you that well, but you know, I have herpes. My ex-girlfriend got raped. It's a crazy, fucked up story. And the dude said afterwards, he goes, man, so you use your ex-girlfriend getting raped to get laid? And I was like, man, if that's all you heard, I'm sorry. And we're like gym training partners. So I was like, man, you know, I kind of joked out of it saying like, if that's all you heard. But it's like, no, man, that's a story that I lived through and I'm telling it. And I'm telling it to people, I mean, potentially so they understand why I might have whatever issues that I have. But why should that be seen as a manipulative act? In a way, it's me sharing who I am, what shaped me, what shaped why I was angry about sex, why I was tormented about sex for years. And when people have pain about sex, they put boundaries around it and they think that that's right. That's like as if I show, you know, I think we should have borders in our country and all that sort of stuff. But if I live by those borders, I can't see the difference between a United States of American citizen and a Mexican citizen when humanity knows no difference. And I live by, you know, what my humanity is first. And then I live as, you know, an American or whatever. I live first as a sexual being and then as a person who has my own set of rules and issues. And we need to know that the truth or whatever that is within us is attached to that humanity or that seduction or that born to be quality that I call it that we have. Anyway, somehow in there, I then became a pickup artist and, you know.
What age is this?
When I was 28.
Okay.
So I became a dad when I was 28. This is how fucking crazy. So first off, when I'm 20, you know, I'm like trying to stay clean and all this stuff. I relapse. I'm like, man, fuck this. And, you know, I started drinking again and stuff didn't get that bad, but then like it got really bad. So by the time I'm 28, my first son is born. I'm like, man, I want to be a dad. I don't know what's going on. And I tried, man. So November, so my son was born in December. His birthday's coming up December 13th. And I'm like, all right, it's in November. I'm playing with my band. And I mean, dude, at that point, it was like, whatever you put in front of me, I do. You know, like what we did, like, I'm not yet a dad. I didn't know if I was the dad, but you know, whatever. I actually played that role more than the other guy. But my pastimes were like, you know, drinking to oblivion. You know, I had to have sex. I had to start crying about my life. You know, like things for fun is like a couple of my friends are dead. A lot of my friends are dead from that. But I just remember me and my friend, we'd like get hammered and run as fast as we could into a wall, like with our head down to see who would knock ourselves out or who would pussy out. Like, these were like the things that we would do. So this is like my late 20s of just crazy anarchy, whatever. I'm 41.
Okay.
So basically, you know, I'm 28 and I'm like, man, I have to stop. Like I could be a dad. And so I did. But I'm like, man, I don't want to do all the shit that I did when I was like 17, 18, you know, trying to get clean then. And because now I have baggage, you know, I've like, yeah, part of the way I funded myself, you know, I was a waiter, whatever, but I stole stuff and like I traveled around the country and played music in DIY punk bands and basically ripped shit off. That was what I did. And so I wasn't really good with women. So my baggage wasn't really sexual baggage, but it was like fighting, vandalism, like just being a dick. And like, to me, like a punk rock ethic is a very cool thing. But to me, what I interpreted it as was just a reason to not be responsible for anything. That was my thing. But a true, you know, punk rock ethic is much different. But I lived in that scene and I got fucked up all the time. And to be honest, like a lot of people are grossed out by the intensity that I'd bring to the table. But dude, there were people in that scene that did it on a whole different level. Like there's a band called Leftover Crack or a band that was called Dillinger 4. And like some of those guys from those bands, like Sturgeon from Leftover Crack was just, I mean, the guy's an insane, like there's this guy, Matty, who played in this band, Lucifer, who's dead. And, you know, just insane level of not giving like the highest degree. Like it was just weird. I mean, if you asked me to shit in a box and throw it on somebody, I'd do it. but they would just do stuff that put the fear of God in. Like, it was just so fucked up. So, but anyway, so I just hung out with a lot of those people, and you know, I was like, man, I gotta stop getting loaded. So I did. I white knuckled it. I became a dad. A lot of, like, all my friends dropped away just because when you're you're in that environment, you're not partying with them. They kind of slip away. I was like, man, I'm gonna get back into film work. So I worked as an artist too, and I get back into film work. I'll do that. I helped shoot a movie. I did like grip work on a movie, and then it was not, like, trying, like, emotionally just warped. And I found the pickup artist scene. I remember I stole the book, The Game, and I didn't read it all. The girl, the mother of my kids, read it, and she's like, "You'd be good at this." And I was like, "Okay." And then I like looked online at the internet marketing, found, like, you know, like all these guys like talking about it, and I was like, I'm gonna try this out. And then I paid for a workshop, and lied to everybody about where I was going, did it, and you know, did really well. But what was interesting is I met dudes who lived in Dallas. I went to Arizona for the workshop, but I met people in Dallas, where I lived, Dallas Fort Worth, who were actually teaching at that workshop, who became very noted PUAs at the time. And dude, you know, I was so used to it was like, Steve, go up and like spit on that guy and tell him he's gay or something, so you'll fight him. And it didn't. And I'm small, you know, but I'd do it, and I'd get in a fight, you know, and or not, or you know, get my ass kicked or something. But a lot of times, if you act that crazy, people they're mad, but they're like, this guy's gonna give me hepatitis C if I fight him or something. Like, they're just, you know, they're afraid to fight you. They're angry, but they don't actually want to. They're not afraid that they can't beat you up. They think they might get sick if they fight you. So I was used to doing shit like that, and I'd be terrified if I did that now. But I was used to doing shit like that, and when you got into the pickup scene, they were like, "Go talk to that girl, you know, go kiss her on the shoulder." I'm like, "Really? Yeah, totally, no problem." And so you hear all these things, and pickup is so full of shit at the time, especially. Like, it still can be. Like, obviously there's people selling to you bullshit, but like back then it was just so ridiculous. They were like, if you do this move and you say this thing, you do this NLP thing, she's gonna want to fuck you. And so I would like try it. You know, it's like, you know, women think this way, and I'd be like, okay, let's try it. And so I was really brazen, and so it led to a lot of success. What's crazy is then, you know, so I take a workshop, I start making friends with these guys. They start flying me out to their workshops as like a coach assistant, and which is cool because you get a free trip. And I'd never done that. You know, it was just staying in nice places and all over the US at the time, not yet international. And people would be like, "Hey, I want to hire you." And I remember, and I was a pretty compassionate guy, right? And so this whole time I'm not getting fucked up. I'm still within this window of my first son being born, and then, like, you know, he's about a year old, and then I start teaching like pickup. It's like really dysfunctional. And yeah, now I didn't know what to do, for better for worse. You know, you don't know what to do, and you make and you're coming from pain, you make a lot of bad decisions. So man, I get asked by a guy to do a one-on-one with him. And I mean, you got to realize, like, I waited tables sometimes, I did photography, I worked in theater, but most of the time I stole stuff to make money. And so we're not talking a huge amount of money. And this dude is like, "Yeah, well, you know, why don't we work together?" You know, this is 2006 or 7 at the time. So different economy. And he goes, "Well, what do you say, you know, 4 days, we go to Miami, and I'll pay you $8,000. I was like, okay. And I was working with a company, so I had to split that, but it ended up being in Scottsdale. At the end of it, he said, he's like, "Look, man, all these guys, all these guys, like, you know, they're different than you." And he showed me this picture. Back then we didn't have phones, but he takes this like he takes like his phone or his camera out, and he starts showing me pictures. And he's like, "Steve," and this guy did amazing on his like one-on-one. I couldn't believe it. And he goes, he's like, "This is my ex-fiance." And I'm like, man, clearly we should have started here, man. This is the end of 4 days. Like, what the fuck is going on? He's like, "That's her. Yeah, that's her, like 2003. And you know, this is us together when we're traveling to Madrid and da da da." Like, what the fuck is going on? This guy's like fucked up. And he goes, "Man, she died of cancer." And I didn't know what to do afterwards. And, you know, like I didn't think I could talk to women. And obviously, I'm pretty good at it. He was good at it. Like this guy was like, this guy had no problem talking to women, but he's like, I just didn't believe I could. But I had to talk to somebody who was, like a guy I could relate with. And the guys at the course I took, I couldn't relate with them. So, you should do this, man. Anything you can do to do this, you should do. And I just assume it was like my involvement in rehabs from like 17 to 20 that I got to a certain depth of people and that sort of thing. And so I was like, shit, man. And it was crazy. 2006, 7, you're making all this money. I had some wins, in terms of guys like that. I mean, that was like the first dude, and he's telling me this, and he did help me out a lot. He's a great guy. Man, tremendous. And, I think it's just what I realized too is men are very motivated by sex, but a lot of times we come with pain or confusion, and there's pain and confusion that can just come. Like I was in pain because I was just stupid and was so rebellious, but there's pain and confusion that can come from just not being able to be a man in the world, and we don't understand it. Then we start blaming the world. And it was crazy. So in that whole thing, I ended up, is another funny story. I say it's funny. I say it's awesome, but then I end up relapsing. I like start coaching. I'm like getting fucked up again. I was only just drinking and maybe some pills here and there.
You're in your 30s now, right?
I'm 29, 30. And just like at that point, I just remember that the first time I drank around my pickup artist buddies, they're like, oh, you're not so bad. Like 2 or 3 nights later, I got in some big fight with them, and like I just got naked and beat the shit out of them or something. Like they were like, yeah, man, you probably should chill out a little bit on the booze. So I was just like 9 more months, and then I got clean until now. And now I live the boring life. That's what everybody always says. Like, you don't drink. So only 9 months of my like PUA career did I drink. And I will tell you this from it is that, and I clearly have a problem with this, right? So not everybody has this, but one thing I can get from this is it made me better at approaching, but it made me worse at everything afterwards, except if I needed to brazenly escalate sexually. Because when you're drunk, you're breaking all the rules. So maybe you don't want to be that guy, but when you're drunk, you'll make those huge leaps of approaching or escalating. But thankfully, I learned other ways to do it. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. It's probably more than 5 minutes.
Well, we're only into your 30s now. So, well, no, this is then your work or the work that you're doing now took shape, right?
Oh yeah, man, it's beautiful. Like I would encourage everybody. Well, of course, if you're in your 20s and you're on the straight and narrow, that's good. But your 20s are when you can fuck up. You're only indestructible for a third of your life, right? So up until 30, 35, you're an animal. Like live that animal however you want. If you're fucking up, make it out alive. Make it out alive. You're good. Do what you love and quit before it kills you. That's a very important thing in my life. And coming from people who I know who, life took them away. And, some of them could have prevented it. Some of it was a bad accident. But, live that life. That's the only thing I know. And if you do it a different way, cool. Like, that's great. But for me, like, man, like all that, like, God, for me, I was able to stop in my 30s. You might be able to stop when you're 33, 35. I was 30. And when I was able to calm down, I had to relearn some things. And so in my 30s, so I didn't give a shit about money. I didn't give a shit. I needed it to eat, but I didn't give a shit about it. When I was 30, I then started to make money. So, we were talking about this on another conversation about business, but you need to generate success if you want to understand success. And you can talk about this with women too, or whatever. You want to learn something. You want to get in shape. When I was 30, I hadn't worked out. So I was athletic when I was 15, stopped working out. 15 to 31, I had not run a mile. And I remember the first time I ran a mile again, it was like amazing. I couldn't believe it. It was so hard to get back there. Like to jog down the street at first was difficult. You're like, man, when I was 15, I could do this all day long. But I was out of shape. I don't get obese fat, but I get fat. I'm probably at like, if I DEXA scan myself, I'd probably be at 20% right now, which is a lot. But the you know, it's much fatter. It's probably like 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And but I don't get huge, but I eat a shit ton. Yeah, I smoked all the time. Every now and again, I'll have a cigarette or a cigar just because it's so. That's another story. But
Did we not meet last time in Austin in a cigar?
yeah, hell yeah. See, it's one of those things like it's a good thing. I like it, right? But you know, I'm fairly athletic now. You know, like today I woke up this morning and taught my jujitsu class, rolled with 3 or 4 guys, and you know, challenge actually said, so it was a beginner class, but I was like, man, if you can get a tap on me, I'll give you $20. Get it, let's go hard or whatever. So it was a lot of fun, and made it out without having to pay up. But it's good when I have to pay, because you know they're surprising me with shit. And then you go to another class and you just get slaughtered. So it just depends on the different levels. But no, man, like when I was 30, I hadn't worked out. I get clean. I'm totally broken. I know how to, dude, I know at this point, I know how to meet women and I know how to get whatever I want. Like, and it's not like whatever you want, it's whatever I want. So put me in another country, I could get laid, I could stay with a girl, I could get a girlfriend, I could have great sex with her, I could have an adventure, I could feel amazing, you know. But, you know, after 2 weeks or a month or whatever, that relationship would fall apart, or maybe even sooner. But I could get that, you know, it will. Now, that's not everybody. And so this is what guys need to realize. Like, this is what a good standard for me is for your love life or sex life. If you could go wherever in the world, could you find what you want?
Right.
You know, and that's important. That's a great skill. And again, it's not what everybody else wants. It's what you want. And so I could get that. Now, I couldn't get that with everybody. You know, I didn't necessarily get it from approaching much. Even at that time, you know, in 2008, you know, there's like speeches of me giving like that pickup is bullshit, approaching is bullshit. And you see people go through this. I mean, obviously approaching's good in some ways or whatever, but this culture that we create about becoming a man through approaching it, it almost has nothing to do with the seduction part or the
Right.
sex part or the joys or the actual masculinity part. But to meet somebody is a good skill to have. And and to be social is just a tremendous skill. It's just people didn't make it about being social. They made it about their pain of not being a man. Anyway, whatever. So the thing is that I can get that, but it's not good. So I'm clean. I'm starting to do, so people, now I work with all sorts of people who get clean in all sorts of different ways. But at the time, and still now, I go with a 12-step thing, and all these people have problems with that, and somewhat rightfully so, but I still do it, and I still think it's a good thing. But I work with people who've done like a boga and, you know, go through a different thing or do some other form of recovery. But it's all good. It's however you get clean is cool. But the thing is that I start working on myself, but I'm still a sexual person. And I met you way back when with Zan in Austin, probably around this time. And, you know, it's cool because Zan was always a cool guy. Like, who could you talk to in 2008 or 9 about sex or relationships? You know, you talk to somebody in this industry and they're going to lie to you about it. Like, oh man, you control the bitches and these or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's just like, and you kind of believe it, but then you get the experience. And you're like, that's not true, you know? So I always valued a lot of what Zan and what he said, what Hypnotica, you know, what they were saying, you know, like, cause they had experienced things, and there was like, it wasn't all just like this great story, you know, it was this great story that clearly came from experience. And it was just such a cool thing. Anyway, man, I just developed in this way where, you know, I could start to stabilize my emotions, see where I was coming from. I wasn't causing more damage. I still had so much damage to clean up. And I started to realize like sex was my bottom. And I remember in 2008, I got this girlfriend and she changed my life, man. This is where seduction is such a beautiful thing. So many women even in my mid-20s, like, so I was afraid to have sex because of, you know, my girlfriend's trauma and her traumatic experience that traumatized me. And of course, hers is much worse, but it just shook me, you know, it shook me. And, you know, I would have it in my mid-20s, I started having sex again. I didn't have sex for years, and let alone a girlfriend. Didn't even talk to women. But in my mid-20s, I started to have sex again. And I remember this girl said, she was just this nice, very beautiful girl, this nice, like pleasant girl. And she's like, fuck my pussy. Say you're going to fuck my pussy. Slap me and choke me. And I did it. I slapped her. I choked her. And I was like, fuck, I'm like those rapists. Like, I'm like, I can't believe I'm liking this. Like, I'm coming. I am this. I am this bad person. Oh, Jesus. You know, I think all this like terrible stuff. And I'm like, I can't process it. Right. And then I went out with this girl, amazing woman. Her name's Julia. She's fucking, there's two women in my life named Julia that were just on the, like, seduction wise, taught me so much. And one was much later, but Julia, we were 25, 26, and we just had so much sex and loved it. I just went through all that pain. As she describes, she's like, I've never had sex with somebody who's puked on me while having sex. I've never had sex with somebody who passed out while having sex. I've just never met somebody that had to drink himself into oblivion or get fucked up to pass out, but have sex, cry, get violent, all in one thing. It's pretty amazing. I'm like, man, how did you, because I still talk to her. I'm like, how did you want that? What the fuck? But it was great. It made me realize I enjoyed sex. So that's a little bit in reverse. By the time I'm 30, I've had so much sex that, you know, like whatever, who cares about the count of partners? It's the quality of the sex. But I had a lot and I could get whatever I wanted. It's just, I got it. I got it to feel like I'm in pain. She's going to make me feel good. I feel like, oh shit, man, I owe like $2,000 in child support. Like, let's fuck this chick, you know, or let's have this relationship. Oh, this person's saying I'm a piece of shit. Let me feel like I am worthy, because I am. Like, she's going to think I'm, you know, amazing. She's going to think I'm a god. I'm going to go do that. So I stopped having sex for the beauty of sex, you know, like that humanity. I lost that. I had it because my insecurity, you know, was telling me where to go. I always say this in coaching: pain shows us where the problem is, but it won't show us the answer. The answer comes much different. And so I'm in all this, you know, pain that I can't see, can't put my finger on, but I know I don't want to be here now. So I'm going to go to what feels good, you know, power, pussy, whatever it is. Right. If you watch that movie, Enter the Void, they go to this club in Japan and it's money, sex, power. It's just so funny. But to me, it was like, I wouldn't coin it as power or sex or whatever, but it was like, how could I get the thing which would make me feel good? And it gets accentuated because I'm coming from a deficit. So it starts getting like very addict, like I'm grabbing at different things, whatever feels good. But I stop enjoying it. I have partners. I have multiple girlfriends at this time, and I mix them up and I don't care. And I don't, it's like, did I even like sex? I didn't even like sex. All that time with Julia in the past when I was 26, I was full of shit. It never even happened. Like, I mean, we did it, or we did fuck, but it was just bullshit. I was fooling myself. I hear men talk this way. And then I met this girl. She has a very unique name. I won't say it. We'll call her Trish. This girl changed my life, man. I met her, and I get to work in Trinidad, Tobago, and I meet her, and it's great. This is the last time. This is the last time I've smoked pot. I smoked this big ass joint with this guy Ding. It was great, man. I learned how to open beer bottles with my teeth. And I was drinking then. So I opened a beer bottle with my teeth. I like learned this great art. Ding rolls this big fat joint, man, this huge joint. And we're sitting on the street. All these people are fighting. We're in Trinidad, which is it could be a rough country. I always say that Trinidadians always get pissed off. I'm like, no, man, it's a rough motherfucking country. I've seen bizarre shit. And anyway, so we smoke this joint. It's not really hitting me. And all the people I'm there with are fighting. And I'd been to Trinidad before, and I'd met Trish, and she drives up and she's like, let's get the fuck out of here, man. So I get out of there, and the cars are English style, Commonwealth style there. So she's on the right side and I'm on the left. And she had these huge boobs. Not really a boob guy. I keep bringing this up, but she had these huge boobs. And she's sitting there driving. She's talking. She talks more than me. We're smoking cigarettes. And the weed hits me. And I'm like floored. Because Ding and I, we smoked a lot. Like, because it wasn't working, man. I was like, what the fuck? And I just look over at her and I don't know what to do. And Trish and I had talked a lot. Like we had never had a formal relationship, but I had met her before. And I think I had like, kind of like hinted at some sexual stuff. And she's just like, boom, right back. I mean, like it was pretty green light, but I'm just so wasted. I can't do anything. Remember what I said, getting fucked up, you can make those jumps easier. And I just grab her tits. And I just remember one of the few things I remember is she's like, okay, we could do that. And man, there's a lot to this story. I'll skip over some cool parts. We'll save that for the next podcast. But I just get naked.
In the car.
And in the car. And I don't really remember all of that. And then we end up to go get doubles, which is this really good street food there. It's just like bread with chickpea beans, whatever, garbanzo beans and sauce. And it's like 50 cents. It's great. Like, let's get some doubles. So we go to Curep, which has the best doubles in Trinidad. There was a midget who used to hand them out. It was awesome. And we get there, the doubles place is closed, and somebody knocks on the window. And everybody in Trinidad is very dark. They're generally East Indian or African descent, but they're really, really dark. And I'm not. And I just remember, like the next thing I remember after being naked and grabbing her tits is this guy knocking on the window, like asking, and after the double place is closed, we find that out. And he's like asking for money or a ride or some shit. And you couldn't see in her car because they were all tinted, and she rolled it down. He's like, holy shit, look at the ghost, man. Because I'm all white. I'm naked. And he leaves. And then we got a hotel. And for 10 days, all we did was fuck. And I remember it was so amazing. I dated this girl. We had a relationship for years. And she changed so much of my life. But in that time, in that 10 days, it was like you got to know that all these urges. See, it's a long story just to get to this. I was fucked up. I had fucked up shit, but I knew sex was good. And I knew this urge was good. But this urge was also killing me. This urge to fuck and to feel with women was killing me. But in that time, this beautiful process happened. And I'm working in seduction this whole time. So I got to test it out afterwards. So we're fucking. We get to all the things of fucking. It's like, give me your baby, do whatever you want to me. Like, fuck me in these ways. Like, take my pain, let me cry in front of you. There's all this shit coming out. But it made me realize, like, man, that time with Julia was not, it wasn't fake. I now remember it. This time with you, there's this carnal drive that I have that I can't understand, that makes me feel good too fast, that makes me feel good so fast that I forget about the pain, and I use it like pressing a button instead of getting to know it and getting to sit in it and seeing that my pain comes out in a different way. My love, or, I don't know if I had love, but I could love when my dick was in a woman. To feel that comes out in a different way, and to understand that there was this process that I had to go through that, when I hear people talk about ayahuasca or DMT or something like that, they're like, oh man, I saw God. I mean, and when I've done DMT, I've done the toad and done all these ceremonial things since and whatever, but nothing beats sex in that way, where you're with a woman and you see her and she looks at you differently, and she could have been a stack of bricks before. And of course, we all want hot women or whatever bullshit. We see beauty and we interpret it as like, we want to have sex with that. Then there's this social definition, but there's these other things when a woman likes you and she was like, maybe not a woman we'd be attracted to. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, and then it's like, what am I drawn? Like, man, why do I want that? When I was I could still be in pain now. I can differentiate it a little bit better, but it would be like, fuck, I want that. I want that. I don't want to feel like this and I want that. But it's not as simple as that. It's not as polarizing as that. It's that I want to taste that because it's true. It's you. It's masculine. There's a truth in it that is there. And we were talking about this on another conversation where it's like you and and I don't know all the details about your story, but we went into the Garden of Eden. In order to be sexually happy, you could have one partner, you could have an arranged marriage, you could have a monogamous life, you could have all these different things. One's not better than the other. The important thing is that you experience it. And then you can speak from another part of yourself when you can experience it. I decided to go on this thing which society and culture made available to have all this crazy sex. So one style of having sex isn't better than the other. Just my story is that I started out with tons. And I also walked in with all this weird shit too, of like being all angry and sad or whatever and not able to articulate it. But with sex, and think about this. I've only talked about, well, I've talked about a couple, but really 2 women who changed me at the core. And since then there's been a few more, but it's still a few. It's a handful, man. And I've been with many because I make mistakes, because I don't know. I'm still trying to speak this language, but I see this beauty in her looking at me, and this need to commit myself to her, and just her body. And if I looked at what I wanted in a woman before that, she didn't fit many of the check marks of it, but it was there. It gave me the power that it was like my illusion of well, this is what's hot. This is what I want in a relationship. This is what's going to be good for me. All goes away. No, this is what I need. This is the truth. And seduction's truth is beautiful. I see so many people running from that because they've experienced trauma, rape, divorce, bad things. But know that you should always love women. They have the thing that completes you. And I love it. All the MGTOW guys are like, look at this insane piece of shit. Dude, I've been burned probably worse than a lot of those guys. But the love for women gave me the powers of man. And to tell me that you can be a man, it's like being a fighter, but never having been in a fight. Like you have to fight. You have to lose. If you always win, if you always get first, if you don't know how to come back from getting your ass kicked or beat, or have a woman's full effect test you, you really want a woman whose sex, whose essence, her femininity, her stuff beyond the sex is 100%. You want her to be so great, but you can't let it hurt you. Man, you're a coward.
Yes.
Oh man, there's so much in our biology and in our spirit, or whatever you want to call it, that gets unleashed from that woman. And after that, I was like, I'm with Trish. I'm with her. We're 100%. But then a week goes by, a month goes by, I leave Trinidad, I meet another girl, I try and just be social, and whatever. And, it lasts a couple months. I remember when that seal broke, man, I went on like a crazy tear of just having sex, and then like the guilt and not being able to communicate, and then communicating, and then being powerful enough to convince her to have an open relationship, and then having all of that be fucked up, and then dating more and going with the lying about it thing, going with the learning how to talk about it, which ties into your post of like, she asked me this, I thought, in 2008, 9, 10, like you had to present these things in a certain way that all the like the non-Zans, the non-hypnoticas, the guys who didn't have anything to say, it's like, well, be powerful enough, be strong enough. Like she shouldn't, you have to be alpha, but you have to answer these questions in a way. And so, but what I had to realize is some of those come from an insecurity. Where am I as a man filling the gap that's causing the starvation that makes that question be asked, and so on. And it's just an interesting learning experience. And it was beautiful. And, we probably stayed together 2 years too long, because when you're in that much experience and that much love, it's hard to let go of. And that's another thing. How do you break up as a man? How do you let go? How do you feel that pain? Because it's going to kill you, man. You let go of this woman whose experience, she defines you. And now she's gone. She's shit. She's trash, whatever. What is it? How do I deal with this, man? And it's just that's the beautiful thing of it. Your pain is going to teach you something. And it's even better when you have other men or people around you who can help you guide that, which is why I like you, man, because it's like, you're really doing it. Who are we if we speak from the illusion that is created by our fear. You know, it's such a terrible thing, but I see so many people doing that, you know?
Before we get to, because I'm assuming or I know that this concerns all of the work that you're currently doing. But before we get to that, I just want to thank you for sharing your story, first of all, because I'm sitting here just baffled and, you know, all ears, and it's very intense and it's beautiful, and there's an aliveness to it, which, you know, I didn't want to interrupt anything. I'm happy because I never heard your story, or at this scope at least, you know. So yeah, I resonate with too much to tell right now. But I didn't want to interrupt. I want to hear everything, you know. And it's
well, next interview, because to hear your story, to share, to be around a group of guys that, you know, talk about this, it's so cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's so cool. You know, I mean, like we both know Canute, great guy. And he would do these things where it'd be like these dudes share their stories, but they didn't have as much pain. I love Canute. Canute is such an awesome guy, but it didn't have the fucked upness, the like, God, like that woman is gonna like I'm gonna kill myself for that one, you know, that sort of thing. And
yes.
It's just, I think there's got to be a little bit more.
I hear an incredible intensity. I hear an incredible rawness. Also, a very good. You seem to find a way to constantly express yourself, you know, and accept yourself in a way, you know. And it's I think it's fantastic. What I hear also is this: you seem very hands-on, you know, very like dealing with it. You're facing it and you go into it. Is that something that comes natural with a kind of brazenness, or is it something you have to learn to take action, you know, and you know, take the bull by the horn and deal with it, or is it natural, or do you have to learn that?
Well, I had to learn it. I mean, being brazen for me, I mean, like certain people might be brazen and they're able to translate that into you know, being hands-on. For me, I mean, I did a lot of things. You probably see this all the time. Like a guy will make money to show that he's not fucked up in a certain area of his life. So I was really hands-on with like doing things and being active and showing myself and needing too much attention or whatever. But a lot of that was to cover up the, you know, the things that I didn't feel so good at. But I just burned that way too close to the end, where it was like, here's the consequences, whether it was coming from the law or coming from just whatever obvious pain or dysfunction. You know, it's like kind of like what was first. But most of that I just ran out of so much gas. So out of desperation, I had to learn to work on a couple things. Now, I did have some brazenness. So when I did learn a way to work in those things, I might have been able to step into it more. But any personality type, you know, I've seen guys that are much more passive do it and those sorts of things. But man, I really had, whichever category of my life it is that I was hands-on with, like I was, a lot of it was by force. You know, I ran out of gas, desperation.
It's very interesting you say it this way, because the second theme of the Way of Seducer course is action, you know, taking action, acting anyway, to get in the habit of acting. But the first theme is about presence and really checking into with yourself, like feeling yourself, you know, because there's so much there, you know, when you start feeling into it. And I really like what you said, that if we're not doing it right, action could be like running away from that first part, which is
sure,
checking in with us.
But action is always good. I mean, action as opposed to inaction is yeah. I mean, God, you take pain and you give it inaction. What do you get? You take action and you give it pain, or you take pain and you give it action. It's going to run into something.
Right.
It's going to, you know, it's going to find its truth or whatever it is very quickly.
That's why I always say, there's like, to the guys too, there's no greater stage than seduction and the encounter with a beautiful woman to discover, and also to create your own personality, masculinity, you know, discover about yourself and mold yourself, you know. Sometimes guys think they can do it, or they have to do it independent of women, independent of action, in a kind of like a bubble, and action will like amplify everything, you know, make it
Yes.
clearer, but
Yeah.
also grow faster. And so I really like that, you know, action is always better than inaction. It's
Yeah.
something I stand for very much too.
Most definitely. And then presence, it's like presence brings the shit to the surface. Cause like if my expression is flawed, so I have a lot of experience with my expression being flawed, but my expression had to keep going. But if I have to stop expressing, what comes up? Oh man, gotta do something. I gotta check this. I gotta, you know, like stuff comes up, right? Stuff immediately rises to the surface. I let that come up, sit through it. What comes up after that? You know, and it's so interesting to be able to be present in the moment, meaning being, you could say, I mean, it's so tough because in nature, like I use terms like balance or, I don't know, some other shit, but they don't exist in nature. Like balance and equality doesn't exist in nature. I don't mean that in a political way in anything, but because man-made rules are different than natural rules, but there aren't rules in nature, you know, it exists. And so when we think about these things like rising to the surface, when we think about being in the present moment, that's in the existence with the world around you, letting it affect you and you affect it. But within that, we're not equals. You know, the world affects me much more than I affect it. I am a part of it. You know, I don't define life. I'm defined by life. And so in all of that, I need to be able to sit with that. And when I sit with that, all the stuff that are the man-made or the Steve-made rules starts coming to the surface. And that's where a lot of the flaws are, but a lot of the good things. That's where my true expression is too. But I need time to sit with that and not always need to be like the bitch of it, you know, the bitch of my own record, the guy who's always hearing, you know, whatever I'm spinning or creating with the life around me, because that's part of a distraction from me to hear the truth of life, much like the truth of seduction or humanity or whatever. So you know, by force, I had to be present, but it wasn't something, it's something that I wanted to do. You'd watch like, you know, some Kung Fu movie and be like, I'm going to be that, but I wasn't capable of it. But I had to learn it by force. And yeah, I don't have it. It's a struggle every day.
But it's a great thing to say. Like I write in the book, be grand, be audacious in your aspirations. You know, don't play small in the name of modesty. You know, be audacious in your aspirations. Then and only then, life will do the humbling for you. You know, I think it's really your job to like go this, you know, with their own flaws, constantly with their flaws, but to put it out there. And then life will teach us what we need to know, you know. It's a,
so for everybody listening, obviously you love Hans, but one of the things that's interesting about you is there's people who speak to a broken man and preach one philosophy, and those are all the marketers and whatever. And there's a lot of them. I mean, that is the industry, right? But then there's people that speak from their experience that have found a truth or kind of that like the way or their nature or something, but they're coming from their experience. And then there's what truly is. And so for you to find ambition, you don't have to do anything. You could be of your nature. But if you're a man that comes from your area of experience and these things, live it, motherfucker. Live it, because it will teach you. And that's your way of learning. But then there's the bullshit guys who speak to the broken man and only want to sell to the broken man. And ambition then is a quality of life or fucking, you know, something that you're in deficit of. It speaks too much to your pain. But this guy, like one of the biggest things for me was that whole time when I was getting loaded, I would read Henry Miller. And I wish more seduction people read Henry Miller, because I would read it and get so manic. I'd get so crazy, and it spoke to me. And it was, you know, and I'm American, and I didn't get the difference then. But then, you know, as I traveled and stuff, it was like he was such an American dude. And it was this guy who had that experience that found the truth. But I always say this because there's guys who live differently, you know, that aren't going all crazy like me. And if you're just that simple dude, you're just kind of like, oh man, it's, you know, let me talk to and have a good conversation. whatever it is, find the beauty in that. Or you have one sexual partner but that's what you need. You can find the truth in that. You know, you can find that, but anything that will allow you to live life, but you have to live life on life's terms. Well, we'll show you the truth. We'll show you what you need. So many other people are living that life over here. That's the broken guy, you know, the guy that's hurt and just doesn't want to hurt, you know, but knows that he has a sex drive or some masculine thing. But it's just interesting because you're speaking, you know, truth is another thing. There's no truth. Nature doesn't care about truth. No. But in my man interpretation, you're speaking the truth. But so many of these motherfuckers get confused by that. You know, it's like, yeah, take the bull by the horns. You're going to do it. And then, you know, you get done with that speech and you kind of get a few successes and you're like, okay, what next?
I see a fear-based versus a very love-based intention, you know, or stepping into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Explore it now.
What next, baby?
What's next?
I can keep talking. I can keep fucking.
It's fantastic, really. I said it already, Steve, but I'm very happy to hear that. You know, it's and I love sitting in this space. You know,
it's funny because all the guys in my group, they're like, "Man, we've heard this story like 100 times. Just shut the fuck." Okay, you go to Trinidad, you grab her boobs. You know, there's that part where you took a shit and passed out, and you left out of the story. Maybe you should include that.
Well, we never heard it, so that's great.
Yeah.
How did all this up until now inform the work that you're doing right now? And maybe you could say a little bit about the landmarks or the pillars of your work right now.
Dude, as a true PUA, I'm going to DLV myself. That's a demonstration of lower value. I am the laziest, most whatever coach. I don't know how I've had the success I have. My community's fucking kick-ass. Like we did this workshop, and there's some crossover guys that we have that are just fucking like brilliant dudes, man. And let me just tell you, that's how, like, I don't know Hans. I've met Hans and we've hung out and stuff, but I know guys that are in my groups that have been changed by his groups. And that's how I know he's good. And dude, there's not many people that have that. So that's like the real test of caliber for me. But, you know, we were sitting there and I have different tiers to my groups. You know, one's called TSL Online. That's kind of like the big course where we dive into it. And then there's something called MD Excellence, Men's Development Excellence. What a great title, where that's the lower tier course and, you know, super high value. And there were some MDX guys there, and the TSL dudes are like, man, you do TSL? And the guys are like, no, I mean, I don't know the difference and whatever. And like, Steve, what's the difference? I'm like, well, there's these many more calls a week. You get this content material and these results. But the dudes were just like, dude, just fucking do it. Dude, look, just do it. Another guy comes along that's TS like, oh man, you're like, what are you doing? You're perfect. Like, just do it. It was just so funny to hear these guys that the max of what they were saying to the other dude was just do it. It'll be the thing. And I'm just sitting there going like, man, I don't do shit anymore. I'd like you guys approach some people. I give you some advice. We do a circle. We hot seat you. You know, we do all this stuff. We have these calls that go 20 hours sometimes, and I'm not on for all of it. The community just lives and exists, and it's like all these other guys are making this shit happen. I guess I'm a center point. You know, we were talking about on the call last night that was like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 hours or something. I don't know, whatever. But these guys were on it for a long time. They're like, Steve, you're not lazy. See, my wife always calls me lazy. That's what happens, guys. That's what happens when they get
Don't believe the hype.
So, and I am, man. I mean, like I set up great groups of guys. You know, I write the material for the courses. We go through it. It is generally, you know, my philosophy, but that's been changed. You know, that's been changed by different guys in the group pretty much. But, you know, it gets shaped as it goes, and it's a great system. I mean, I would say I have a tremendous talent, you know, and some of these things might be natural, you know. It's like I walked into that one guy that offered me $8,000 who said I was different, you know, or through life experience. So I'm very good at reading people and finding out where their pain points are. I'm very good at seeing where their pain is. You know, I mean, like, you know, like, so for instance, I have this client, you know, I talk about him all the time, and he talks about this shit on video, but the guy was homeless a year ago. This doesn't happen to everybody. Hardcore heroin addict, got hired by his family. His family spent millions of dollars, 12 rehabs on him. And I tell the family, I'm like, I came in at the perfect time. He was ready to change. He was in enough pain and these types of things. And I walked into a good situation, and in which I still believe is true. But the fact of the matter is this guy has never had a job. This guy's never had his own place to live. He's never had male friends. He's had relationships. He knows how to have sex, all that sort of stuff. But now he lives in one of the best parts of Dallas. He makes more money than me. What a dick. He has tremendous learning disabilities, tremendous, to the point where he's unteachable in school. He's been clean for, X amount of time, but it's not about and the whole clean thing, it's not about the time, but he's functioning. He's able to have relationships with men and talk. And there's still a shit ton of work to do, but nobody else got that with him. And so it's like, why? What's the unique thing about me? I'm willing to put in the time. I understand, but dude, all these other rehab guys, they understand. But the differences that I would get is that I'm hard about some things. You can't break certain rules with me. But if you learn in a different way, I want you to learn in the way you can learn. And I'll just be straight up with this dude. There's a lot that's motivated by the street. There's a lot that's motivated by really fucked up things that everybody who's listening to this would tremendously judge. And I have to go, hey, that's okay. Like, let's do it. Let's find out the best way to do that. Because if I can get you functional in that, see, it's all about being functional. Remember, it was like, to make enough money, get enough successes so that you can learn business, get enough experience with women so that you could know women to not have it be like a fantasy. How can I get this guy to function in life and feel motivation? And, it's different and I'm not a psychologist, but let's say if he was a true psychopath, that means he's born that way. So that leads a different thing. We can go in that direction. If he's a sociopath, that means he learned it, but there are understandings of different ways to live. So it's like, how can I motivate you in the ways that, society would say aren't so good, might cause some damage, but it's better than being homeless and robbing people. So how can we learn to do that so that we can learn a form of empathy and connection that baby steps its way up? And I don't see a lot of people doing that. And the other thing too is, so I'm a coach, I'm a friend. I can say that. If you tell me some illegal shit, if you tell me you did something that was bad, I don't have to report it. If I was a therapist or a psychologist, that might be in the mix. But my job, I don't encourage people to do something which is violent or illegal or whatever. But if they tell me that, my job is to help them process that pain or the confusion or the understanding of what's right and wrong about that. And so I'll work with people. I'm just very adaptable. And then other people, I work with them. And, we worked with a guy, he came in on our workshop for a little hint of it. And he just, of course I have a different opinion about this, but he was like, man, these guys are all screwed up. I'm not screwed up. I just want dating advice. So that's not the guy for us. That's the guy that goes somewhere else. So, I work adversely with people in the way that I work. But I'm very passive. I'm very mellow. Like I said, there's some rules you don't break. But in that somehow, yeah, go ahead.
Like my experience of you and now also in the way you talk about is that you're very, well, first of all, you're very caring. Which is a great, no, it's my experience. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And you have, again, I see this hands-on approach. You care enough. You've been there as well. You want the guy to transform, and make him functional. That's it's exactly how I like perceived you before too. So I think that is great. I was also very interested in that community part. It seems like you find your leadership role, and it's just a role of a leader. And you play it well enough that you may be tapping really into the transformative and healing power of community.
Yeah.
A group of people coming together and really be real with each other, be there to rejoice and mourn together. That's the impression I get, and I think that's maybe the most valuable thing to offer. I see it for me too. You know, they're my teachings and they're my beliefs and my experiences, my coaching, whatever. But they pale or compared to the transformative and healing power of community. You know? And I'm learning this more and more, that my story is just one of them. You know, my advice is just one of them. And most guys learn a lot more from being in community, being there with other guys, you know, who have their own stories and have the space to share their story, you know, and guys crave it so much. I realize this now more and more and more as my community grows. You know?
Yeah, you know, it's like nobody wants to hear this. Like perhaps guys who are like looking to hire you or somewhat or whatever it is, like they're like man, but I want to get rid of this pain, or I want to solve this problem. It's like, man, just sit around a group of guys and talk about it. And then the problem starts to lessen, and then you realize the real solution. Nobody wants to hear that, but that's very effective. And even if it is the exact solution to the problem that they have, it's so much better when you gain perspective from people. And it's interesting because, so when it comes to leadership, I don't really, what do I do, man? I set up a website or a forum. I don't do, you could ask Jim Simmons about what I do for leadership. I don't fucking know. He's more of a leader than me, but I don't do anything. But in that, I've built a pretty big following. But what's interesting is that, so you can do, like, I've seen successful groups like this, but I haven't seen them for a long time. And there's like a lot of them, they're bullshit, but I haven't seen groups in men's development be that successful that do the alpha thing, you know, where it's like, you look at me as different, or with me, I do it to a fault, but I don't separate myself from the group at all. You know, like we're all equals. Now, so here's the rules. If you start attacking somebody, like to the point where it's, you know, not to help them in their best interest, you'll get talked to, right? And we'll try and figure it out. We don't want to kick anybody out. There's only been, since 2009 in my online groups, which there's still people from that original 2009 course involved in my groups. If you like basically breach our privacy maliciously, or you threaten somebody, and man, it's gotta be deep. Like, it can't just be like, fuck you, you know, I'll kick your ass or I'll kill you just in the heat of the moment bullshit. It's like, it's gotta be real. Those are the only ways you'll get kicked out. 2 people have been kicked out. There's people that have left, but 2 people where I'm like, nope. And those were both like privacy and safety issues. Now, privacy online is crazy now. You know, I used to not think it was such a big deal, but now it's just nuts. Sometimes shit can slip out. You know, people make a mistake or whatever. But if it's malicious, like if it's like, no, man, you shared this in a group and I'm going to tell people, you're out. You're out for good. You're banned for life and anything that I do. So it's a real hard line. But up until then, it's like, okay, oh, so you're mad at this person? Like, you want to kill them? You want to beat their ass or whatever it is? Like, yeah, why? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Oh, you could be right. You know, maybe not interact with them so much. Like, there's a very lenient way of dealing with it. This always gets brought up on my calls too, because we encourage people to share about anything. So I'm like, share about anything. Just, we can't encourage you to do anything illegal, but like, if you, I mean, like, did something fucked up. So then you get a guy who comes on the call. Well, what if they talk about rape, or they talk about pedophilia, or, you know, something like that? It's always like the sexual extreme, which does not really happen much. But I always say, I'm like, man, if somebody wants to talk to me about that, okay. I mean, there's a difference between talking about it and wanting to do it.
Yes.
There's a difference between also having done it and wanting to get it off your chest, and then plotting to do it right. I don't encourage the plotting to do it right part.
My experience with that is very self-regulatory, and I really like to adhere to the burden of proof is always with exclusivity. You know, you try to include as many people as possible for as long as possible until you can no longer. You know, that's a real good sign of true community. You know, that you really work on that. On like, it's like with love, you try to be as inclusive as you possibly can. You know? Until you can no longer.
Man, but as you know, as like you're describing, if you have a group where guys can say anything, and look, man, and we say like, hey, some shit, I'm not trying to put a rule on you, but I'm saying the group isn't
Yes.
ready to hear your like sexual rage or whatever stuff that might be raised. So let's look at the people that you can trust and talk to them. Like, but and I'm not trying to divide the group in that. I'm just saying, like, look, there's a lot of people here and they don't understand where you're coming from. I may not understand where you're coming from, but I just most likely am not going to judge it too much. So, but think of if you give guys an opportunity for that, man, that's cool. And that's why it's like there's guys going like TSL and MDX, do it. Oh, dude, man, I can't. Like, when have I, you know, and those dudes, like, one might be a cop, one might be a millionaire, one might be, you know, there's all sorts of different things. Society should not define our success. Our feeling of who we are and what we bring to the world in front of us should define what we call success. You know, that's really the thing, the benefit that I'm trying to create with the different groups that I have.
I see in the community you're creating the greatest gift, man. I really think so. Yeah, community has been my main focus in the past years, and I do it in the background, you know, because when you put it on the table for guys, you know, the importance of community, and until they really experience it, they people don't really understand the transformative and healing power of community. So it's always in the back of my mind, and it's my directive force. So I'm very interested, fascinated of how that's being co-created there with you. We talked. You want to say something more?
Well, I just want to say with me, one of the things with me is I'm weird, you know, like I do like it. You know, I have friends that live in Austin and have always lived in areas that I've always had friends like that. But amongst my friends, we always sit around and talk. So I was used to that. So when I made friends with people online, like if I were telling people, if you want to start a men's group, do it face to face. But the reason why we're successful in ours is we got a lot of guys who are willing to do that online, which not everybody is. Not everybody has the time to do. But I liked that. And so I liked it. So I was willing to dedicate, you know, 5 hours a week of just talking shit with some dudes online, you know, via
Oh, it's powerful, man.
just audio.
It's very powerful. Like I'm surprised by the power of connection virtually online. You know, you go really deep. I mean, yes, life is incredible and it's probably the most powerful, but I'm genuinely surprised by the power of community online. You know? So this is a great opportunity that we have. Let me I want to ask you about one theme. So we talked about your story, past, present also. Talked about your work. A couple of themes came up, which is the action taken, which I very interested in. You talked a lot about sex. We talked, and I didn't plan for it, but we talked about community, which is very close to my heart. I would like to talk a little bit about this. I would like to ask you, the role of anger, the role that anger has played or is playing in your life, also in your work. Is it an important force to you? How do you deal with it? Because it's one of the themes in my course, and you always struck me as a guy who has a lot of anger and found at some point constructive ways to deal with it.
That's funny because one of the things Canute told me way back when is he's like, you know, the guys in the Hans's group or in the Amirati group or whatever, they like your stuff, but you're too angry. And which I don't understand. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand? They're like, I get what he's saying, but he's so angry. Dude, I've, you know, like whether I want it or not, it's there. And a lot of it's been pulling back. So to see anger as a benefit, it's more elusive to me, but like I definitely do see it because it shaped good parts of me. But most of my life, it was like pulling that back because it was a bad thing. But this is the thing with like all of your demons, they're not demons. They're demons because they're you made them a demon. They're not demons because society, like if you listen, other people aren't going to be involved in your life. You know, me and Hans, we might be influential in your life, but it's your life. And at some point it's going to be your own. and you need to make your own rules. And so the demon that society says is bad, like, oh, if you're too greedy, you're too angry, you're too whatever, man, no. But you do need to you do need to be shaped by the world. So it's this weird balance. Like, you need to get that feedback, but at some point you need to get enough information, experience, feeling, consequences, good results, bad results, to make your own determination of what is this thing? What is this thing? What is this anger? And man, I did this workshop this last weekend. It was a 5-dayer, and it was just like, those things, they take it out of you. And I'm old now and shit. I told the guys, I'm like, man, whatever. They were all happy and shit. I'm like, you should have just come in 2007 when I had energy. Like, you guys, like, come on, man. Like, I had to pop like 4 Viagra just to get out of bed, to fucking make something happen here. But anyway, so I got pissed off. I got pissed off twice on this workshop, twice. And I think I kept it from the guys, which normally this is the place where we talk about this, but it wasn't I was angry about something outside of the workshop. So pissed. And then I started thinking about everybody, and I was pissed. And I'm like, man, fuck this guy and fuck this guy. And probably some of that came out. But what I got to realize is that, like, for me, if I only react upon the source, so I believe anger is a source, man. It's a big thing. It's a big thing in you, right? It's part of you. Maybe it is a reaction, but all of my micro reactions, if I start reacting on that, it's not so good. That's where my bad decisions come from. And this is where I'm a slave to these sides of myself. And what I mean by slave is I'm not working my core values. That's another funny thing. We get into core values and purpose. Everybody has this like checklist of their shit. I'm like, okay, so when do you do that daily in your life? And then they never do. But the things that I daily do in my life that I really do appreciate, why I'm there, why I'm involved in this thing, what I do like about it, even when I'm mad, I need to get in touch with that. And I need to go like, hey, I'm reacting. I need to cut this shit out. How do I do the next best thing? How do I do what I'm supposed to do? And so there you have to kind of have like a little code to follow. Like, how do I be social? How do I be of service? How do I stop and just listen to somebody? How do I answer exactly what they're saying? Or how do I express back exactly what they're saying? Now in life, we're reacting all the time. So it's such a very tough thing. There's so much gray area in that. But my anger wants me to live in black and white. My anger always wants me to be right. My anger wants me to fight. It makes me never want to be wrong. My anger tells me things which oftentimes aren't those core things that I want to live by, that I have lived by, that in life experience, if I have a good group of people around me and I've tested myself, that my anger then shows me, or my true self has shown me that I can be angry and live my true self with that. But my anger always tells me you can't depend on me, but I don't see it, so I don't see that. So when I start to notice, I'm like getting mad about small things, like, somebody texts me, like it'll be so stupid. They'll like text me and I'm like, don't you know I'm in a workshop? And my wife calls me up and I'll be like something about what she says pisses me off. Like, I start thinking in those ways, but it takes like 3 or 4 in a short amount of time for me to go like, oh wait, I am more pissed off about this situation. I am more pissed. Yeah, right? You text me in the middle of a workshop. You can tell I just got off a workshop.
A guy would ask a question and it's very genuine. And I'm like, why would you ask that?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, I'm on a bike race right now, you idiot. Or like, I'll be doing something like, I'll do some like jujitsu tournament and maybe like, what the fuck are you doing? What a dick. Or like I start thinking those things, right? Being unaware of people, but I only catch it after 3 or 4, like it's been an hour and 3 or 4 have popped up. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I got to stop. So for me to deal with that anger, because I'll take it too far, I stop myself. But also, here's the best part. And this is kind of maybe where you're getting at, is anger is such a valuable thing. If I start to go, that's bad. Like, remember when we were talking about sex, I go like, man, fucking and like fucking prostitutes and like, getting cheap sex from people, or like just fucking a chick in a club. This is like bad behavior. You hear all sorts of people who have drug problems say that, because that goes kind of hand in hand. You're like, doing dope, you're going to go suck some dude's dick and get the shit beat out of you. It's just, It's like, man, that's what you do, man. You stick a needle in your arm. Got to get good with that too. But maybe not everybody. So if you haven't done that and you're sticking needles in your arm, just don't stick a needle in your arm. You get it. But anyway, the thing is like, you think like, God, the sex is bad. Like, like, oh, my girlfriend got raped and and they beat her, and now I'm liking to do harm to women while I'm having sex. I'm this terrible person. I didn't get to realize that. But then what I realized was later on, everybody thinks that. They go like, oh my God, I like to abuse women because I watch porn like that or whatever. But they don't get that anger has a place in you. It's there, you know, whether I was born with it in my brain or whatever, but it's something which is telling you something. I'm just too stupid. I'm so stupid that I think that it has to be translated into act now, get mad at people, always be right. But that anger might come from like, wait a minute, if I take a step back 2 days later, why did that piss me off? You know, why did the person texting me in the middle of the workshop when I was busy make me angry? You know why it made me angry if I really look at it? And I can only see so much. Like I probably am going to get 90% of this wrong, but the 10% that I think I have a grip on is like, I didn't think I had it under control. I didn't think I could do it, or I felt off in that moment. And because I felt off in that moment, that curveball of the text or the curveball of the person doing that, you know, and I can only change the things about me. Maybe the person is an asshole too. But like, there was a dude. Man, I wanted to fuck this guy up, man. It's like, so you come to Steve with stuff and he wants to get violent with you. But I mean, I didn't. And who knows if I could. Probably could have. But you know, that's another thing I get from martial arts, man. I know how fragile the body is, man. I've been concussed. I've broken my hand multiple times. You know, if my hand shatters and I punch you, I'm out of the fight and then I lose, no matter how good I am. If I hit my head on something, I know how easy it is to get knocked out. You know, if like, it's just whatever. I may be a fan of fighting and into it and might be good at certain things. It's pretty easy to lose, you know? So when it comes down to this thing, this guy, he said he came, spent hours with us. I had him talk to all the guys. He was like looking to hire a seduction coach. I said, man, the seduction industry is fucked up. Stop listening to me. Stop listening to these other coaches. He was like, there's like 10 dudes here, right? It's like $250,000 of money that's been spent on bullshit. And they've probably talked to a lot of the other coaches you're talking to. Just talk to them and have them get a feel for you, give you advice on, you know, what would be good for you. And he did all that. And he came back and he's like, these guys are all messed up. Like, I don't have problems. I don't have problems. And I'm like, man, if that's all you got from them, we were at a different meetup. I don't understand what you're saying. He's like, I'm coming off wrong. And I'm like, you are. So what I asked you to do was specifically ask them how they've had their journey and what could help you and what to look out for. And you're looking at multiple coaches who I don't even want to know about, but you should bring that up because they've probably hired them and it's been off. And he's like, okay. And he goes and talks to him. And I asked the dudes what he said. And they're like, man, he said the same thing to you, that he doesn't have problems and whatever. And I'm just like, you know, fuck that motherfucker. This made me angry. But if I step back, why is it really making me angry? You know, why do impulsively, like I look at that guy, I want to fucking like smash him. And I don't smash people, but I have the feeling that I want to like smash the motherfucker, right? The reason why is because like he insulted my group. Not because it's my group of whatever, but he insulted guys that I've bled my heart to. And they've healed me. You know, I had issues with my relationship and me and my wife split up. Yeah, it happens, you know, to everybody. And I was hurt. Dude, I know, because I'm so fucking stupid, but dude, I know how to win a fight with a woman. I know how to break a woman down. I know how to get all that. You know, I get that. I don't want to do that to my wife, right? This is a totally different thing. And I don't want to make it about power. I don't want her to cave. It's funny. This dude from this convention that I used to work at, he met me after. I didn't bring up that I had issues with my wife. He met me afterwards. And this dude, he laughs. And this is what makes me think how fucked up the world is. He laughs and he goes, oh man, you should have fucking tied her up. You should have brought a bunch of women over. You should have raped her and then fucked the other women in front of her. And that's what women want. Like they have it on the red pill. They have it on the red pill for women. That's what the guys do to women. And I'm like, hey man, I'm good. Issues resolved. I was just telling you what happened. He's like, no, you need to do it. He's like laughing. And I'm like, I'm so glad I don't work with your fucking convention anymore. But that to me is like that's like the men speaking to broken men of what it sounds like to be a strong man. Dude, I always wanted to tell him, I'm like, and whatever these things are, like, I'm more of what you just described than you'll ever be. Like, I've had women that did all sorts of crazy stuff for me or whatever. Like, I've played the power game. I mean, I never raped a woman and then forced her to make me watch other people have, but I mean, like, I get the type of pseudo power dynamic he's going for. And I've lived those things, and they can be good. Again, just like the anger, there can be good in that, but you have to be a man. You know, like if you want to have multiple women in your life, you have to be a man to have that. It doesn't make you a man because you fucked a bunch of chicks and they listened to you because you lied to them or whatever. You have a bunch of women in your life, you got to be strong as fuck in a certain way. But that doesn't mean then you're good in business or good in these other ways. Anyway, back to this anger thing is like, I got to keep that in check because my anger is telling me something. And it's coming from a deep part of me, that deep part of me that comes out when my dick gets hard and a woman grabs my balls, because I think differently then. I'm in a different mindset. My anger comes at me, it pops up. Somebody cuts me off on the highway and people get into this crazy thing that they don't know how to handle. That shit comes up. Somebody punches me in the face and I walk away from it. And I go, man, I'm a pussy. No. I've been there. Where I've acted on that and it wasn't good. Like you want to, and it hurts every time if I walk away from a fight. Actually, it's funny. I never get in fights, but this dude we were at this restaurant. He's like, you looking at me, motherfucker? I'm like, dude, I wasn't looking at you. He's like, that's right, bitch. Blah, blah. And I'm just like, hey man, it's cool. And my buddy's like, dude, you want to fuck that guy up? And I'm like, no, the dude's drunk, man. But it hurt to walk away from that. And he kept challenging me. And eventually he was so drunk, he apologized. He's like, we're friends. And the whole time, then he got close to me and I'll get in that like PTSD fight mode because he got close and he's like, oh man, we're buddies. And I'm just like, man, like, don't get that close, motherfucker. Like it kind of tripped something in me of like, anyway, I walked out of there and I'm like, man, fuck you. Your head runs. You go, man, geez, like I should have done something. Let me tell you something. You do something. There's all the social shit. You get arrested or whatever. But like you hurt somebody on that level. Like if you get in a fight, you have to hurt somebody till they stop. So if I do some jujitsu shit and he's like, stop. You're going to let go, get some like arm bar or something. You're going to let go and he's going to come right back and fight you again. And you have to stop him. So you have to knock him out. You have to hurt him to the point where something breaks and he can't function, or you have to choke him out. And even then they come back to life, 2 seconds later, 3 seconds later. Why would you want that? Why would you want to do that to somebody? Now, in the cases where that's happened, you do feel good. Like you do feel good. Like you fuck with somebody and you, like there's something to it. Like if you punch somebody and you feel bones break or your bones break or whatever, or you do something and blood comes out. Like there'll be times I'll that's happened and I smile. I remember like joy, this joy came out. It's this weird primal thing. So it's this gift that your body and mind and whatever is giving you, but that doesn't define it. So then I come back to the real world and I'm like, oh, I smiled. I like that. That's what the kid says who hasn't fought enough. You keep fighting, you get hurt. Like, man, my teeth have been cracked. Like I broke my tooth. It was the worst pain I've ever had. And it had, like, that tooth had to come out. Talk about running into a wall and knocking yourself out. That was like the goal at the time. But like, why would you want to do that to somebody? And why would you want to hurt them to that degree? And when I was a kid, I'm thankful. I lose all the time now, man. Like, but when I was a kid and I would fight people, and I haven't fought in a street fight in a long time. In street fights, that's a whole nother can of worms. Like, people have weapons. Like, you don't want that shit. But I would fight people and I would humiliate them, man. I would make them feel all this pain and I just wouldn't stop. And then, people would be afraid of me and it made me feel good or whatever. But then you lose. And now, so I'm 41. I can't tell you, like, man, I think the last jiu-jitsu competition I won, the guy still beat me 3 other times. You know, it was with my buddy David. Good guy. We fought. He's my arch nemesis in jiu-jitsu. We always fight, right? He's real good. And yeah, I'm just whatever. I'm not as good. Just straight up, I'm not as good. You get older, that should happen. Whatever. He's better. You can't say shit. He's better. And the time when and the coolest thing about, I'll tell you about even fighting him. Both of us fight each other, and it's like, oh man, that was cool. That was awesome. I guarantee you, he feels good after every time he may beat me, but he doesn't feel great. Like he gets it. And the one time I beat him, I hurt him. I felt bad immediately. You know, it was just like, fucking, you don't want to do that shit to somebody. And so when you feel that sort of thing, and then my buddy Matt, who I train with all the time, he dislocated my ankle about this time last year. He ripped it. It's awesome. It's beautiful. I have it on video. It's so beautiful how he does it. And you can't hear it breaking because I'm screaming. But it's so awesome how he did it. It was so great. I appreciate it, man. It taught me so much about how to do a toe hold. And I love the move. And but in that, you know, we're trying to fuck each other up to test how we can get to know different body types and so on. But if we took anger in that, it would fuck it up. But the anger does come out. There's a part, and I know Matt too, great guy. That motherfucker, he'll fucking get on top of me. He'll do some catch wrestling stuff. He'll neck crank me. He'll pop my jaw out of place, and he's laughing until I'm hurt. Like it feels good to him. He's a very smart guy, very good guy. He's not a fucked up human being, but there's this animal part where it's like, yeah, I feel like I'm fucking Jesus Christ. This is what it's like. And there's a time in real life where you're challenged and somebody does cut you off and they step on your toes and you want to fucking drive your face into their, just into the ground, man. You want to take it steering wheel and hit on the corner of a fucking bar. You want to do those things. You want to feel that. That's good. That's good. You don't need to act on it. And maybe you do need to act on it. Maybe not that much, but you do need to see where that idea of smashing it, then you take that action and you throw a punch and it doesn't do nearly the same thing, but you take it and you might lose. That's the other thing about fighting. You might lose, but fuck all that shit. Sure, that's great.
I'm sitting here mesmerized listening to your relationship with anger. You know, and you obviously like dealing with it, and it's great. Like apart from what it teaches you, anger about you, or the possibility of learning about yourself in that. What I really liked was in the beginning you said it's from the same source. It's from a source, and that's what I try to present to guys is that anger is maybe a bigger taboo than sex nowadays because of all the negative consequences of anger in terms of like aggression. But what we're trying to do is for guys to really become aware of the feeling. Let's say if anger is a feeling or an emotion, to just become aware of it and to really see that it is an energy, you know, an emotion, something you can use for bad, say aggression, or something good, say assertiveness, you know. But we're very quick to judge it as something bad, whereas just is. It's from a source, and it's not so much different as any other emotion where it comes from, your sadness or your joy and the anger. And in that sense, it's not good or bad. It's something you can use for good. And I think it's essential for a man, you know, to really get in touch with his anger. What are the things that like get angry about, you know, where are your borders? What are the things that anger you? And to really get in touch with it instead of running away from it, because when you do run away from it, that's when it's going to come out in aggression, you know. So the coming from the same kind of source, I relate to very strong as joy or sadness, you know.
This is interesting because anger, so sex and rough sex and violent sex is one thing, but violence is another. You know, so true story. It's awesome, man. Christmas Eve. I'm like, oh, dude, it's great. Meet this waitress. We're hanging out and go back to her friend's place. It's Christmas Eve, so we're kind of losers, right? And I think I'm like maybe, oh man, I forget what year it is. So I had to have been, maybe I'm a year clean or something. I was newly clean and sober, whatever. And she bites my lip. A lot of girls bite your lip, right? It happens. She starts biting it hard. And I'm like, all right, stop. Anyway, she starts laughing. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I got to like choke her. I got to like, I'm trying to, she has my lip. You can't like tear her away. And she lets go. Anyway, we end up fucking. And it was so crazy because we're fucking. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like all fucking dominant and shit. I'm pretty, dude, I get, the animal comes out, or especially then. Now when you get old, different. But the animal still comes out. The animal comes out.
A different animal.
Yeah. The animal's coming out.
It's a little teddy bear now.
She's like, fucking give it to me. And I'm like, yeah, fucking take that, all this shit, whatever, man. Just giving her what I got, man. Giving her the A game, not the A+ game yet, but the A game. I'm like, fucking giving it, man, driving it. I know how good I am, all that sort of shit. And she goes, fuck you. And she like, boom, punches me in the face. And I'm like, and at that point, dick goes limp because there's a difference, like the rage that came out of her. And she's like, you're a fucking pussy. Why am I here with you? And I'm so stupid in the moment. I think I can beat it. We end up having sex for 4 hours and like, I am scratched up, fucking bitten, like just all fucked up. And black eye, all the sort of stuff. Like my lip is just like at this point, like this big, and so finally I'm able to come. I couldn't, the whole thing was like, I kept buying into her game and fighting her war, but not fully buying into her game. So I get back. This is crazy, man. I go to a recovery meeting afterwards. I'm all beaten up. It's Christmas now. Go to recovery meeting Christmas. I'm beaten up. Drive back home in my truck. The wheel, my axle breaks on the ride home. So the wheel comes off. So I'm like 2 blocks from my house, but I got to wait for the tow truck to get it back. It's Christmas, so it's 2 hours. Get there. I had a duplex that I was a photographer. My photo partner had the other side, and him and his girlfriend see me, and they're like, "What the fuck happened to you?" And I tell him about the situation like 2 sentences. He's like, "Oh, she wanted you to beat the shit out of her," and I'm like, "I think you're right." And he's like, "No, I know I'm right. You need to fuck her up, not just choke her, not just like rough sex." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's not me. Like I couldn't stay hard, whenever that it got there." And so this is the interesting thing about anger and sex and all these things. There's something that charges you within yourself that you got to know. And then and I don't know her whole story. I still actually talk to her a little bit. And, maybe there's like some other abuse, but sex is like disassociated. Like the pleasure, it was not for fun for her. It was not for enjoyment. They had like most girls, like when you're a man and you come, they're like, oh my God, that was mine. And she was like, okay, we're done. So it's like fucking, there was no joy in it. So anyway, we're going at it and all this stuff. And it was all about how it could be this game of hurting each other. I don't know what it was. And so when you as a man, you got to be able to differentiate. Because see, the anger tells us I'm always right. I got to act now. I got to fight. I got to manifest this fantasy in my head of wanting to smash this dude's face or rip his fucking jaw apart or whatever it is, like do this like violent stuff. But the reality of it is the expression doesn't need that much. That's just this little, and when we think about it, imagine this, because there's no angel or devil, but it's this kiss from the devil. It's this kiss from that dark side. It's that thing which just pops its head up that says, no, wait a minute, this is you too.
Yes.
To me, doesn't.
Yeah. I present it sometimes like the power to destroy, when women are so attracted to vampires, let's say as a fantasy, it's this, they have this power to destroy, but they make an exception for her. That kind of balance, is really like what speaks to a woman, that power, not the act, not the violence, but to know that he has what it takes, he has that power. That is essential for a man to bring in a relationship, for a woman to feel like, fuck, I feel protected by this guy, not in danger, protected,
That's fucking great, because there's so many, that's one place where you just see that fucking truth, man. That vampire, that person who has that power, but there's that beauty that he sees. And who is a man who doesn't who hasn't experienced that beauty, which makes them want to change at their core. And what a woman to continue that. Like that girl Trish I was telling you about, she made me want to change, but I didn't fully change. I changed as much as I could or whatever, but like what about that woman that's, oh man, makes the vampire go like, hey, this is like, I could eat this shit.
And
I'm gonna go.
It's more than the power. It's even almost the need. You know, that vampire has the need. Fuck, I want to bite you. You know, and I'm not. And it really builds on that tension. Like I wrote last week that every woman wants to domesticate her wild man. You know? But she is never more happy than when she fails.
Yeah, dude.
It's
You
that
should tell
kind
my
of
wife
tension.
that. My wife is like, how the fuck did I end up with you? Because I'm just so disgusting. I'm like so dirty. This girl's so clean. I won, man. I always tell guys, I'm like, learn how to take care of your own shit, or else you're dependent upon a woman having to do it for you, which is my story. But I lucked out. It was great. So I don't know. Maybe you should just do whatever you do and see what comes around. But no, man, like, you know, really neat, and a lot of things are together with her, and yeah, all sort of very clean. You know, I'll like not bathe. I'm like, I'll just fucking man, I don't want to brush my teeth. I'll eat an apple or whatever. You know, like it's just this crazy bullshit guy thing, right? And so I go about life in that way. But you know, if I wasn't that way, and she's always giving me shit for it, but if I wasn't that way, you know, you need that sort of dynamic and what makes it happen. And for me, and think about this, like, because you were talking about anger, and it made me think about making somebody submit. There's one thing when they just say stop, but there's one thing where people like beg. They're like, no, please stop. And somehow that, you know, would fulfill me. Now, dude, I'm a pussy now. I lose everything. I haven't been a physical specimen for 10 years. And the funny thing is 10 years ago is when I started working out again. So that means when I was all fucked up and doing fucking Percocets and shit, I was more badass than I am now. Like, it's like I won more. But anyway, so the thing is that it made me think about that submission when you just fuck somebody up and they're like, you know, they're like, just please stop, or like, you know, see that truth. And it's this weird fucked up thing that when you see it, you're like, it makes you feel good. Jump to women, completely different. It's not violent at all. It's not about violent, but there's the same feeling of submission when a woman submits to you. Oh, it's great. Like I remember, and it's happened so many times, but I already talked about with Trish, the point in that 10-day sex that we had where I'm like, I'm just going to fucking come in you. And she's like, do whatever you want.
Yes.
And it was like, it's just this feeling of like, this is what's meant to happen. Now that's how people have babies and stuff. And
the surrender of it, you know, in
yeah.
Spanish. I remember my Mexican girlfriend, she subyugado, you know, and it's politically incorrect in many ways, you know, but that's the submission of it, you know. And a woman told me that you don't know how good it feels to surrender. You don't know how good it feels. And it's at the essence of it, you know, it's the essence of the way men and women relate. I'm still exploring this,
but now there's ways that men surrender. So people always think it's a balance, right? You know, it's like, oh, you have to surrender to her sexually, which can happen. I mean, that shit can happen. But for me, I surrender to my wife all the time. Like people always talk about all this strength stuff. I'm like, oh, whatever. At this point, I just don't give a fuck. This is how we work. And man, I love her. I've given my life to her, and and every day doesn't feel that great, but there's something about that commitment. But one of these things is how I surrender to her. And in that, it's like, I don't have to fight. Yes. I definitely treat her differently than I've treated any other woman. And anytime I've treated her in those ways where, and not to say that I was like mean to other women, which definitely I was to some, but like to many, I wasn't. But every time I've done that other way of being a little bit hard in certain ways and whatever, it was the wrong choice. Like I knew it was like, as soon as I did it, I was like, oh man, that doesn't feel right. And so even to surrender to that, or just surrender to the family. Like a lot of times it's not just to her. At first it was to her, you know, like I say, you know, with Trish, it was like, I wanted to give my life to her, but I didn't. And with Maria, I've definitely given a huge amount of my life to her, and it was just available at the time.
Is
I
it
was in the right place. Or,
is your surrender? Is it the commitment? Is that the same thing? I'm trying to.
well, part of it would have been like, now I'm going to listen to her. I don't like, so to me, what made sense was like, well, I'm going to go travel and I'm going to fuck other chicks. I remember, this is funny, we do this thing in recovery where you go through your step work, and I was going over with my sponsor, and dude, oh man, there's this girl before Maria that was like, I was basically fucking a bunch of chicks, and I had broken up with Trish. It warped my mind. I went through a tear. I went through some alone time, and then I met this. I didn't want to have another girlfriend, and then I met this girl. And it was like, I'm glad. Jim knew me then. This was in 2012, and Jim was like, "You shouldn't be with that girl." And I'm like, "Why?" And
his voice.
And dude, let me tell you something. If I want to give my sex to somebody, I bought myself a window of time. I it's not like I'm doing some technique. It's not like I'm some masterful person, but if you ask to feel the total me, if you feel the total me, if you feel the total anybody, that girl's going to stick around. And if she gives me her total, like, I'm going to stick around. It's just going to, like, that's how powerful sex is. The problem is nobody knows how to give their total self. They all think it's like, oh, you thrust in this way, or do this, or you say this thing and drop the fairy dust, and then she's whipped. It's really about how can I find ways to express my total self. I gave my total self to this girl. This girl was, man, I wrote my soul inside her pussy. And she had never been fucked like, and she told me, she's like, Jesus Christ. And I just broke up with my boyfriend 2 weeks ago, and this is like insane. I've never felt this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, tell me you feel love. Don't make love you know what? And she's like, I do. I'm like, I'm yours. Anyway, 3 months, and I'm like fucking all these other chicks too. But I'm like, God, this girl is like, God, dude, I want her. And she had one of those bodies where you experience a woman's body. And after you've experienced so many bodies, you know how rare it is to find like certain perfections, and let alone their pussy, man, the vagina. Like, there's so many different vaginas. Like, God, it's amazing to explore one, and how your dick fits. That was always interesting. Women would always say, we fit so good. And I'd be like, what? But then after you feel enough, you're like, you know, like where, you know, how am I sitting? How am I emptying myself in you? How am I filling you? How are you put your juice? You're like, how is that on me? Like, how's that changing me? Like, all that sort of stuff. Like, you just get into it. Anyway, so this girl, like, man, it was too good. And I'm like, man, maybe I should stop fucking these other chicks. Chick ghosted me. I don't know how many women, but there's a lot of women. There's two that after I gave them the A+ game over a period of time, like, rewrote how that woman can ever think about sex again. Not even because I'm great, but because we got there. Because seduction, connection, what is it? Two different things coming together to create a whole new thing.
Yes.
This whole new thing, you could not deny. It was a force of nature. It brought out something in us that had never been seen before, and we had to eat at it again and again, but she could stop. Two women. And one I really pissed off. I, like, you know, fucking disgraced her. I embarrassed her. That's why she left. This other girl, like, I don't know, she's gone. I wasn't good enough. It was like, it fucked me up. Going through this step work, and I'm talking about it with with the guy you go through with my sponsor. And I go, you know, and you know, I was with Trish for all these years, and she left me, and she, you know, she gave me every opportunity. You know, a guy in pain acts a certain way. I'm like all upset. And I'm like, you know, when I think about it, Trish would have done anything for me, and I couldn't do it. Like, oh, the regret, you know. Then I kept fucking all these chicks, and, you know, this girl comes along, and I'm like, oh man, I want her. Maybe it's because I was still fucking chicks on the side. Oh, I'm a terrible, the guilt, you know, comes in. Oh, I did wrong. And he goes, well, you know, if you're going to have morals, if you're going to have stuff you believe in, this is like the step we did was about what I believe in about myself. He's like, if you're going to cave to that, just because of failure, you don't deserve to have those morals or those things you're going to believe in. I was like, holy shit. And I'm like, that made a lot of sense. And then I went and fucked a bunch of chicks because it made me feel better. And in that process, I met Maria. So I met Maria. The time I met Maria, yeah, I'm 35 or whatever, 34, 35. And I was fucking some like 19-year-old chick, hot, you know, all the good stuff. I was fucking some chick who was kind of closer to my age that was really like smart and mature, and like the sex was really good. I met her. It was a really weird situation. It's actually on video because I was with a client and he was recording me audio wise. And then she opened me, and then I got up like a proper seducer. I just got up and started. I ignored the dude. He knew what was up. He totally knew what was up. I just ignored it, sat next to her. She was with two guys that she was like hooking up with at the time. It was pretty funny. And I went and sat next to her, and he started recording then. Can't really hear anything, but whatever. Anyway, as soon as I met her, you know, we're talking. I'm so like fucked up. I think I had like phone sex with her. A week goes by before we see each other, but somewhere in there, like we have phone sex. And she's really tall. I'm short. I'm 5'8" and she's 6 foot. And so we go to watch my friend fight. I'm thinking this is perfect. We go there, and it's in San Antonio, which is 70 miles south of Austin, where I am. And she lived in San Antonio. So we go there. My friend does a fight. He loses. And she was going to drive me back. So I got to ride there with my buddy who was fighting. So I'm like, perfect. Just go ride back and fuck me. And then we go to an art show. And we're sitting there. And I just remember, this is so weird. She smells me. And this is how I knew. She smells me and she's like, oh, you smell good. And I'm like, fucking, dude, yeah, guys, if you wear cologne, that's cool. But I'm like, come on, man. I go out who I am, man. Fuck. I don't fucking shower, motherfuckers, now, whatever. But, you know, so I'm like, okay, you say I smell good. Let's go. So, yeah, let's go back to my place and talk. Still to this day, she's like, why didn't you say let's go back to my place and fuck? And I'm like, because you can't say that. But I guess to her, you could. So we go in, we get to my place, we drive there, and we just blast each other. She starts making out with me. We have sex right away. It's a pretty amazing experience. I'll spare you the details because she gets so, she's like, why do you talk about all this stuff? Why do you fuck? What's wrong with you? Why did I marry a guy like you? Anyway, but a lot of good stuff happened. But in that, it was just like, I'm not having sex with anybody. And I just felt it. So, you know, I'm 34. I've been with, you know, hundreds of women. I've been with a lot of women. I've been in love so many times. Just like, you know what? I'll chill. I'm going to do what Dave, you know, my sponsor had said, you know, just, I'm going to chill. Couple weeks go by, did
you really like feel that, or was it
yeah no it wasn't a decision. It was a decision because I felt it. Like, I don't believe choice is great, but to make a choice takes incubation time for me. Okay, for me, like I learned slow, but to make a choice, like I'm gonna live good, I gotta. And I still believe this. Like when guys talk about morals and things that they live by, if you haven't worked for that, I can't believe you. And to me, to work for that was, if I want to value honesty, for me, I know when it just sounded like a good idea because I read about it in books and heard people talk about it and it was great and people respected them, that wasn't good enough. I had to learn to lie, love lying, live by lying, and then go, wait a minute, this isn't working. Oh, there's that honesty thing.
Right.
Okay, that's bullshit. I'm going to, maybe it is good. Oh, wait, okay, there's a value in honesty. Wait a minute. There isn't even honesty in between nature in the world, but it's a man-made thing. So man needs honesty because reality just is. So man has a certain identity with truth, that when he can distort truth or see it in a certain way, people feel bad about it. I feel bad about it. Why do I find value in it? And then I start to go, okay, wait a minute. Now I know what honesty is. That's why all those dumbasses are posting on your thing, because they're fanboys of masculinity going like, what a sick fuck. And then one of them was even like, oh, wait a minute. Hans said it, so I retracted. It's like, man, fuck you. Like, when a woman is coming to you, Hans made a reference about like when she asks, you know, if you've been with anybody, it's not because of a moral reason. It's because there's a fear, and that fear is so abstract. We grab at all these rules to make sense out of it. And then when we make sense out of it, it comes out distorted. And we think like, who, man, like, look, dude, me and my wife, awesome. We like get mad at each other all the time. We fuck all the time. We love each other all the time. But in all of that, like, if my relationship, which is good, by all no means, it's not perfect, but no relationship should. If that's possible, I don't like, would I even want that? That takes all the fun out of life. Like all the good things about my life, which I've been sharing about, have been far from perfection, man. Perfection, man-made.
To Seneca, I think, said, to friendship only for its best. I say a relationship to procure friendship only for its best and not for its worst is to rob it of all its dignity.
Dude. See, and the weird thing is I don't know anything about Seneca because that involves reading. But all these guys are like the Stoics. I'm like, man, I don't know what that is. It was hard enough for me to sit through a Henry Miller book, but it's good to go. You know, that and porn, that's where we got this. No, but no, man, it's so true. You know, it's so true. If we have an expectation about something, if we have a rule about a relationship, who are we? Who are we? How dare I take away the expression of a woman? Like, you know, we make it about feminism or masculinity or whatever. No, man. It's about how can I fuck with a woman? If that takes one woman, if that takes 100 women, if that takes a life of promiscuity or whatever, or a life of monogamy, how can I be me in the presence of somebody being them? The rawness of that, man, a kiss isn't a kiss. A kiss isn't a win. A kiss isn't a lay report. It can be all those things. A kiss can be power. You can see submission and feel good about it. You could submit to a woman in another way or whatever it is. But how can you be that? You know, how can you still be you in the rage? How can you still be you in the brokenheartedness? Man, when my woman left me, oh man, the pain, the sadness, the whole time. Ask Jim, ask whoever you know from my groups. I don't think Alex was around then, but like, I'm just like, this is good. And then I'm calling them all up going like, no, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. You know, they give me different advice, whatever. But like, it's like I needed that. But that pain, now I'll tell you this. I don't want my woman to leave me. I don't want that at all. And I can choose that, but how can I live that? How can I be tested by it? The choice is like, you know, man's idea that he thinks he's in control. What a great, like, does nature have a choice? Does anything, does the universe, does the sun going around, you know, the whatever galaxy or the earth going around the sun, like, does that have a choice? It doesn't need a choice. It has the will. It has the same carbon that's in our bodies that came from some shit out there that merged into us. Our choice is a gift, and it creates a great set of rules that we should live by, that man will always think about and wonder about. But we also need to know that we're a part of this thing that's just bigger. We don't make choices about our chemistry in our body. Sure, I can change my diet and change that, but we don't make choices about those things.
Good friends. Sorry that good friends give me the advice. You know, I'm very big on like taking action, creating my own world, all of that. You know? But to listen to the rhythm of life, it is indeed something different, man.
Yes, and let me just go back to that. When I'm fucked, rule number one, and somehow, thankfully, I've beat this into me: stop, ask somebody, do whatever they say. They might give me the wrong advice. Do whatever they say. You know, something goes wrong, do whatever they say. I've been given wrong advice, but I'm a better man for following that advice than if I followed the right advice that came from me. Straight up. Perfect example. I was having issues with my wife. I got advice from somebody, and it probably wasn't the best thing, but it was the best thing, right? So he told me to act a certain way, prepare, but that taught me to listen, and that taught me to calm down, and that taught me to then submit again, because what was talking to me, you know, was my pain, was this dysfunction, this ability to give me tools to solve it. And even how we got back together, I'm sure, like, you know, there's issues around that, but we decided on it. she thinks she's right. I think I'm right. You know how it goes, right? It's like, oh man, yeah, I got this. But what did I get from that? If I go, okay, I submit to her stuff, she submits to my stuff. That's not what we're talking about. We submit because we believe there's more to it that we can't control, because there's something bigger. And now we have so much more. And I remember
unless you do it, you don't really see it.
yeah. And there was this thing where it's like, man, there's this scar that we have. It's not that big of a deal, right? In 4 years, we had one fight. That's basically what happened. And now we've been together for 6, but it's like, oh, there's this scar. And we think that way. Why? Because I'm afraid of the pain. But here's what that pain made me do. Going through that pain, that made me hurt. I don't want, I meant to bring this up earlier, but I talk a lot, even when I get my hair cut. But so I don't want to break up with them. This is the greatest thing in my life. This is great. This is beautiful. This is what I want. There's so many new things happening for me that I don't understand, that I have to, again, submit to. But if that does happen, it won't hurt the same way. Not because I've been desensitized to it, but I know this. I feel this. I'll hurt. No doubt I'll hurt. But the fears that I felt that I was able to work with my guys, man, I mean, I got to tell you, it's like, pick up the phone. I talk to Rick, pick up the phone, talk to Jim, talk to Jesus, talk to whoever, like talk to these guys, all telling me different stuff. Oh, Steve, do this with your body. Oh, Steve, yell. Oh, Steve, man, just get your mind off it and teach. Oh, Steve, let's go work out. Oh, Steve, well, let's talk about it. Oh, man, you're going to be fine. Oh, let's process through this. Let's intellectually understand it. And it was all a circle, and so actually there was some really, really good advice that was given, but a lot of it's just to occupy my time. Didn't get out of pain, but I got to then not react to it and go deeper in the hole. And I got to build some faith in that group to when I got out of that pain, I could look at it and I could realize, like, what was I afraid of? What was I sad about? And it's like, and also the faith that I lived through it. That's awesome. And again, I don't want anything bad to happen, but it's just one of those experiences where I just don't see a lot of men. Like, I see a lot of men, they break up and they're like, oh my God, women attack me and they have so much power. And it's like, no, man, that taught me something. Who else could have taught me that? Who else but that strong, badass bitch that also was badass enough to make me submit to her pussy, to her love, to her sex, to our family and all these other things. Like, that was fucking evil shit pain. Is fucking great, man. Because I lived through it. It's fucking awesome.
Wow. That's a great story. I was going to ask you more about women, but I think this is a great story to end with.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We planned for an hour, over 2 hours. But again, man, really, really happy to hear the story. Maybe some other people have heard it before. I never did. I know many people in our community have not. I'm very happy you shared. I hope they feel the same kind of like aliveness from you, which I've been feeling, you really burning, and it's fantastic to be in the presence of that. Let me ask you this though. What's on the horizon for you? What's next for you? What do you look forward to in the near future with great anticipation?
I always go like, when am I going to be done with coaching? What am I going to do? But it looks like, even especially after this last workshop, it was like, no, we're building at this point generations of guys where there's different tiers. So there's like, we kind of joke about it, like the team fuckboy guys, the young dudes that are just like going out and, hey, let's get some sexual experience, who could have been virgins to start out with, and then like learned a really rich, I mean, I didn't have that, man. Like, it's really cool. But one of the dudes, he's getting a little bit older, and I'm like, it's probably not now, but you're going to grow out of this. And then you're going to be like one of these guys. And then there's the divorced guys, and some of those, they're all different ranges, but 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're speaking something else. And then there's the guys in their 60s. And so I'm like, you know what? I think I'll always have some business like this where there's like a community of men, because it just gets, and right now it's not huge. Like in Austin, there's like 20 active guys. That's good. And, Jim was telling me, he's like, we should cap this to no more than 2 new ones a month, because they've got to get the culture of the group, and then online, there's about 100 guys. It's like, we got to get the culture of that group to sustain. And that's very important. So I think that on the horizon. But another thing is like, my story, save this for another time. I have 2 other kids. I became a dad in 2005, and I didn't see those kids for 5 years. And so after I wrap this up, I'm going to go pick them up. And that was crazy.
For the first time in 5 years?
No. I'd be much different. I might be talking to you, Hans, but not in this capacity. But when that happened 2 years ago, when I got to see them again, that's a whole nother crazy story. It's crazy. Like all these guys talk about like women take away your kids and make up claims and you get ruined as a man. Like that stuff's happened. And I remember I brought it up to the MGTOW Red Pill guys, or I've tried to communicate with them. They said, yeah, but you were stupid. And I go, I guess. I mean, hey, I'll always take the stupid thing, but I felt that pain. And I always went back to women. Some Jim always says, it's like, we've been beaten up, been through the ringer, had our hearts broken in the worst ways. But why do we go back? Is it really for weakness, or is there something more? And there's something more.
You said this in the beginning, and I really believe this, or you said something similar. Women are our stabilizing power, not because they're more stable than us, but because they're the opposite in many ways, And so I feel the same, I really need them, to get some sanity in my life,
Just think of you with it. There's this guy, David Tien. He's a really good coach. I like him a lot. He has a big community that's run differently. It's like all these coaches, it's like we do the same thing, but it's like they're so different. But there's very few good guys, and I like him, and he's a college professor. He's a former professor. He's real smart.
What's his name?
David Tien.
Okay.
And so David, as you normally spell it, and then Tien.
Yes.
And super good guy. He's in Singapore. Tremendous. But he was describing, he has all these videos, and I watched one, and I was so happy because he actually referenced me in it. I was like, oh, he's really popular. Like, he's like really, I'm kind of like.
I probably met him in Singapore a couple of years ago.
He's a great guy, and he's the guy. Well, maybe I don't live in Singapore, so I don't really know, but he's the guy I'd talk to, and I've always been friends with him, and just super great guy. But he was saying, he's like, if all these guys got what they wanted and just had a man's life, like, here's what would happen, and he like intellectually breaks it down. I'm more like, here's what would happen, they'd all fuck up or something. That's like how I'd say it. But if all these women who wanted to separate from men got what they wanted, here's what would happen. And nobody wants that. And then here's all these people trying to come together, and they can't figure it out. So they say this. It's really kind of a different way of looking at it. But man, I'm different than women, and I need to see that, and I am a fan of that. But I need women. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so night and day. Or it's so obvious. I'm sorry, so obvious to me. Like, I have to have that. Like, I'm nothing without it. I'm definitely something, but my masculinity is incomplete. And if you think, I just don't speak that person's language. Maybe I used to, back when I was 19 and not having sex with anybody. But like, now that I've spoken it so much, like, me without women, like a world without women is a world against women. That's something that I've always said. And that's where I see a lot of men turning to. And it's really, you go through that phase. Yeah, I went through that phase, you go through that phase. It's like, the red pill. Shit, man, I was told about Santa Claus when I was a kid, and I was pretty pissed off when I found out he wasn't real. But then I grew up and realized there's a reason why your parents told you that. It wasn't because there's some fucking conspiracy. It's hard. Men and women are very different, but we come from the same thing. And you realize how similar we are once you fuck, and once you give yourself, once you, seduction happens.
We all share the need to be seen, felt, and heard. We're very similar, very akin in those desires. But I'm learning that there's important differences between men and women, and that's the beauty of it. A true connection happens when we see the differences, and get along anyway. That's how unique connection grows, how community goes. Not by stressing, hey, we're the same. No, we're very different, and we get along anyway. And it's like energy, it comes from a plus and a minus, and that's, to me, where connection, attraction, seduction comes from, you know, from our polarity. And yeah, I'm the same, man. I really
I don't.
love women. And I'm so thankful and grateful.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They like, who am I without, like, God, what a disgusting, what a shitty life, man. But I don't think seduction will ever leave me. But right now, there's so much about being a father and like being responsible in those ways that is like, that's a big deal. It's a lot on my mind, mainly because it's just in my face all the time.
Right.
And so that's important. Like being a
Steve,
leader, leading groups. Yeah, go ahead.
Steve, I don't like, to me, like seduction is an essential ingredient of every relationship. Is it in meeting, dating, and in relationship long term? In fact, to me, seduction as an art form never becomes more important than in your long-term relationships. Because I've seen and I truly believe that at the heart of every failing relationship is a lack of seduction. And it's really the
Yeah.
key to a long-lasting, long-term relationship. I'm also, you know, my biggest joy is long-term relationships. You know, and never is seduction more important than in those things, to keep that fire alive, to keep looking at each other with those eyes. Wow, there's something bigger here, you know, and to be able to create that for the other. You know?
It's interesting because from my past relationships, um, like from my relationship now, there's so much about it that has to be honored with privacy because I'm like, you know, not the only one in it.
Mm-hmm.
But from my past relationships, one of the things that's so beautiful, because monogamy for me was always a struggle. And after a while, it becomes kind of like a game. Like I can't be monogamous. Like I can't believe this. You know, oh my God, it's crazy and all this sort of shit. And you try and you just can't do it. And then I did it, which was very hard for the first 18 months. But one thing I got from my previous relationships, and the one that really came from that girl Trish, but there were other girls too, and there were other girls that I was like madly in love with along with her. There was another Julia that I was, it was just amazing. I mean, this girl was amazing. She was a sex worker and had written off sex and had all these issues with it, and you know, and yet she with me, she was able to come to a spot where she felt good, and I know that feeling. And also, I mean, she massively changed me too. But in that, let's say to fall in love with Julia, who, you know, and I would even say, so I was dating this girl, Vicky, Julia, and Trish at the same time. And this was like the spread: one in Austria, one in the Caribbean, and one in Paris. And I would go to all these. This is like crazy. This is like this is my life, right? Vicky was what everybody would consider as beautiful. Like she was really attractive, and God, man, just amazing in like so many ways. I remember just when having sex with her, to look at her body was like just so amazing in a certain way, because she was very long and thin and just had this, I don't know, like it was great. It was just awesome. Julia was short and, you know, all right. Face wasn't that good, but to make love to her is unbelievable. And that's the difference. It was like unbelievable to experience all of that. And she was from Austria, so dirty talk in German is not the best thing you want to hear. You gotta get a girl speaking French. That's what you want, baby. But her like having some loud Trinidadian just shouting it. Oh man, that's different. But anyway, the thing is that it was so amazing to feel that. One thing that came from this is one thing that has always stuck with me, and I wish more men talked about it. People get very angry with this, and this kind of like, this could be playing with fire, but it's part of this truth. It's kind of like the Dracula thing, like, you know, the woman he chooses. There's a truth to that that's so like, God, I wish more people would share why he would choose that woman, to not kill her, to make love to her, to submit her, whatever it is. But in having sex with those girls and allowing myself to fall in love with them, and not be in a place where I had to like run or judge myself, made me absolutely know that Trish was the greatest woman in my life at the time. But to see, like, so Vicky and her body and sex and youth and greatness was great. And it was like, you couldn't turn that down, man. it was just too great. I'd get to stay in Paris and it was like hang out and it was beautiful, man. And then to go to Austria and just go on these adventures, an amazing, amazing woman, and to heal and feel the depth, like true love through sex, you know, it was just so great. Just made me absolutely know. It calmed down all that stuff that made me go like, God, what I have is so beautiful. But here's the thing. If I would have only stayed with Trish, I would just be too blinded by it. And I think that seduction is so necessary. You know, this is one thing in, man, I don't know, 2007 or 8, Zan gave some talk in Austin. You've probably heard him say this a bunch of times. I don't know, whatever. But he said, you know, men never get hit on by women in a relationship, but women in a relationship still get hit on by men. And for men to understand that exchange, whether that's the pursuit or whatever it is, like, oh man, it's you become alive in a certain way. Now you might have a rule not to cheat. Society has a rule, you know, not to be promiscuous. You might come up with some rule, oh, you got to communicate everything. So we're going to be polyamorous, where I see so many people then communicate with their guilt. Like, oh, I'm going to be honest with you about everything. And then you damage the woman.
Yes.
You know, it's just like, it's so crazy. And then you build all this drama.
You know, Johnny says the same, and it's great. You know, if you're driven by guilt, you should keep it to yourself, you know.
Yes.
You don't want to unburden and have her carry some of that weight. You know, you have to do it by yourself.
Johnny Saporno or
yes.
Who? Okay, yeah. It's funny because I've talked with him. I like him a lot, but I just I've never sat down with him much. Even FaceTime, like, so I've spent a lot of time, and he's a good guy. Like there's a lot of good stuff, and he's created this great, you know, convention that, or whatever you call it, but you know, every year at the AVNs. But man, I do not know him that well. But totally, absolutely, you know, if you have guilt, keep that shit to yourself, man. Why would you infect? But I get why you would, you know. But again, it's holding on to that tension. The anger, it's telling you to do one thing. You don't know how to hold on to it. The guilt, it's telling you to do another thing. You don't know how to hold on to it. There's these primal things within us that we got to learn. You know, the man with the hard dick, you know, can be an idiot, or you could be a great man. A man who learns to live with a hard dick, fuck, that's what you should aspire to be. But everybody wants to have the limp dick. They want to fucking come in a chick or get done with their orgasm and go. But it's part of it's how do you live with that tension and then release it in the right ways, you know?
Did you want to say more about the women? Because I kind of interrupted you there.
Oh, the women, hey, those, man. I was about to say those bitches changed my life, but they're fucking, man, those girls, like, man, they're the women. If I'm gonna ever call myself a man, they're part of they had to be the women, the full woman, to get me anywhere close to where I am. And you know, just pivotal ways. And like I said, you know, there's been a lot of women, but you know, there's just those handfuls of ones that, you know, dug in deep and changed something in me. And who would I be without that? And it's still happening. I think, you know, kind of like what is in my future, you know, what is fatherhood? What is masculinity? What is, you know, what are all these things afterwards? And I think about it a lot because with the women thing, man, I've lived everything I've lived. With all the fighting stuff, what I think, like, I lose all the time. Like, I can't, I mean, even if I fight guys my own age, it can be tough. But it levels out because, like, man, for whatever reasons, you know, you walk away with a lot of losses, but I used to not be that way. So to think about what is the meaning of this and that, there's a truth in it. You know, it's funny because, like, I can legally get on testosterone, you know, or whatever, like I can get prescribed it. But I talked to some of my dudes that I respect spiritually, and I still might do it. You know, it's kind of like a cool thing. But, you know, it's like, what am I fucking with inside? But this guy said something that made sense. He said, so there's a reason why we slow down, and there's a reason why you need to learn that lesson. And if you're resisting to learn that lesson, you know, that you're just going to be stuck in that stage you won't let go of masculinity. And if I think, you know, and it's not just about winning, it's about feeling a certain feeling of that when I had more energy, you know, so, you know, we have so many things available, you know, I may take it. I may go for that deal. And before everybody's like, oh, have you tried this diet or whatever? Cool. I'm not asking for advice. I've done a lot of stuff, man, but stuff changes and it's not so bad. And so I wonder about that. Where's that? You know, who am I? Because anytime I've tried to jump for the answer that my pain showed me, which I'm still probably going to do it, man. Fuck, dude. You know, like, you know, I'll take, you got a cure, you got a pill, you got a shot, boom. But you know, the lesson is most likely going to come from the acceptance of my reality, you know, and that's, you know, the world around me always has the right answer, you know, even if it means that a tragedy happens to me or whatever. So.
Wow, that's beautiful, Steve.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm happy I heard this. I feel much closer, you know, and it's.
I gotta, you know what? Jim's gonna talk to me, and he's gonna go like, "Yeah, I heard that shit. You should have asked Hans some question. What the fuck is you think?
Next time you do the interview with me.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's plan on it.
But let me tell, like, I just want to express my gratitude. You know, I really feel you when you say, like, to just listen to people, you know, and how much truth is in there, or to me, like, how much connection is in there. It's to me, I'm also most of the time the leader and the one talking, but it gives me so much peace to be able to, like, sit at your feet and hear your story. You know, it's very grounding and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to me.
Sit at my feet, Jesus. Go on, man. You dudes talking, man.
It's metaphorically.
Yeah. No, I got you. Very respectful. But no, man, I mean, two people talking, like, and so you were asking me, like, how do people get in contact? You can go to my websites, The Sexual Life. You can email me, Steve at The Sexual Life. Right. There's a bunch of shit. You can join my Facebook group. And I would say if you're a guy looking for men's development, join my Facebook group and make yourself heard. Don't just sit in the background, which is Austin Men's Development. But start a conversation. Like, all I give a shit about is you talking to me or whoever else. I mean, you can private message me, whatever, you know, I might get inundated after all of this being so popular. 10 people might message me, but you know, I'll get back to you. And you got to always have time to talk to people. And that's the most important thing. And, you know, my business is good. It gets good results. I still don't know how I do it. I just exist. It's weird. I just do what I like to do. I like talk to people. And then somehow we get better, and people pay me. They pay me. You know, it's like, fuck. It's great. So yeah,
I'll put the links underneath this video. The sexuallife.com. But like Steve,
that's right.
Try to contact him. It's Steve Mayeda on Facebook, Instagram. You know, so try to find a way to contact him personally. If you can't, then contact me and I'll put you in contact with him. I'll start a conversation. You know?
And man, I'll tell you this, if you have any requests for like really crazy jiu-jitsu videos, I'll make them. That's a good way to make friends with me and be like, Steve, what's the right way to do a heel hook or a heel hook from this position or a neck crank or something like that? I'm your man.
That and other important things in life. Hey, Steve,
yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I think it's great that we get to know each other better in light of the forging of our friendship. This is just the first step, so there'll be more. Thank you again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You got it, man. You got it. Thank you.